You're tuning into the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2729, Chapter 2729, Chapter 580 Good Man He 2-3. Chapter 2729, Chapter 580 Good Man He 2-3. Suyu seemed to be able to turn into a dead spirit, right? He also knew the method to reverse the Yuan aperture, but now that he didn't have a deep memory, he wasn't too sure. As for Suyu, he was happy. He too was still alive. As long as he was alive, it was good. I was really afraid that he would die. If he died, where would I find a place to teleport to? Therefore, once he saw he too, Suyu didn't hide it. It was meaningless. He quickly transmitted his voice, Lord He too. He too was stunned for a moment. It really was this guy. He was really bold. A living person coming to the dead soul realm was courting death. He turned his head and glanced at Tua Fa and the others who had followed him. He transmitted his voice to Suyu, if there's anything, wait for me to settle their matters first. Suyu had probably come here because he had something to ask him. He too didn't bother to ask anymore. Tua Fa and the others settled their matters first. Soon, Tua Fa and the others arrived. When they saw Xingyu, Tua Fa asked directly, Xingyu, how's the situation over there? The returning knife is gone. So, everything is safe. Tua Fa was overjoyed. Even the returning knife was gone. He quickly looked at Suyu. Where did this come from? L just switched places at the Starry Palace. Tua Fa said unhappily, this is our territory. Switching undead in our territory, did he ask for our opinion? Xingyu said lightly, there are still many people inside, including the great Qin King. Lord Tua Fa can go and try. Tua Fa was silent. F*ck off, I'm not going. Even if the great Qin King was crippled, he didn't want to provoke him. At this moment, Tua Fa couldn't be bothered to argue with her. He said happily, he too, if there's no danger here, then we won't go. Without the origin returning knife, the Starry Manor will be our territory from now on. You can come and play with us when you have time. He too still had his lair, so why would he go to He too's place? He too cursed inwardly. He looked at Xingyu. Can't you lie to them? You said that it's very dangerous inside, so we can't stay in this place anymore. Meanwhile, Suyu sent a voice transmission to Xingyu. Sir, we still want the 3 dead souls. Their strength is average. Why don't we join forces with He too and kill them? If they killed them, could they get some benefits? It's unbeatable. The stars and moon ignore him, kill the embryo. Kill, kill, kill. We necromancers don't kill all the time. The star moon did not pay attention to Suyu, but said, Star Universe Mansion may have other dangers, you think about it. She also did not want to pay attention to these people, looked at He too Wei, one look for you have something, you return to Hongmongol City. Hongmeng Ancient City was not too far away from her ancient city. It was on the way. He too saw that he was not confident in fooling Tua Fa and the others. At this moment, he was speechless. He smiled faintly and said, I'm going back. It's been a while since I've gone back. I've made that old turtle feel at ease. After saying that, he looked at Tua Fa and the others. He cupped his hands and smiled, congratulations to you this time. The Starry Mansion is within the living realm. Your territory has expanded to that side. You can officially enter the living realm very soon. Tua Fa smiled and said, when the time comes, He too, you can come as a guest too. F*cku. He too cursed in his heart and could not be bothered to say anything more. He looked at Xingyu and said, then we'll leave first. If there's anything good next time, we'll look for you again. Tua Fa and the others were not in the mood to care anymore. They all wanted to go to the 7th floor to take a look, so they all flew towards the tunnel entrance. After they flew away, he too said, "Xingyue, you're disturbing my good business." Xingyue couldn't be bothered with him. Suyu smiled and cupped his hands. "Greetings, Lord He too." He too said coldly, "You're really brave. Learn from my lord." Suyu smiled and said, "My lord was also very brave when he was alive." He too smiled and quickly regained his indifference. "You entered the dead soul realm alone. Aren't you afraid that I'll tell the other monarchs? Once it's leaked, you'll die without a doubt. There are many dead soul monarchs here. Once you force out your life force, the rules will send countless monarchs over. Sir won't do that." He too sneered and looked at Suyu, then at Xingyue. He smiled faintly and said, "Xingyue, you actually colluded with living beings. Once the rules find out, you'll be dead for sure." Xingyue said coldly, "He too, mind your own business." The two of them started to fight, but Suyu didn't want to waste time. He went straight to the point, "Sir He too, I want you to take me to the area where you came from. It should still be there now." He too said faintly, "Where are you going? Didn't Xingyue say that she knows where it is?" Suyu smiled, "My lord, you must be joking. How could we know where it is?" Then, did they really mean what they said? He was too lazy to say anything more. He directly rejected, "Impossible. That is the only way out for the dead soul realm left by the rules. Only there can we enter and exit normally. We can even think of a way to enter the living soul realm from there without being restricted by any rules." Of course, they couldn't tell Suyu about such a place. Suyu wasn't surprised by his decision. He quickly said, "Sir, when you become a living soul, the so-called rules are worthless. You can come out from anywhere, why bother with a passage?" He too said indifferently, "You want to reverse the dead souls and turn them into living souls. Do you really think that it's easy? In the past, I also knew the method to reverse the death aura. I once reversed a monarch. From what I know, when the speed of my reversal is faster than the speed of the other party's death aura, I can succeed. But the facts prove that I was wrong. The reversal failed, and halfway through, the aura of death and the aura of life clashed, and he exploded." You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2730, Chapter 2730, Chapter 580 The Good Man River Map 4. Chapter 2730, Chapter 580 The Good Man River Map 4. Therefore, reversing the situation was not that simple. After saying that, he continued, "Moreover, there are some other difficulties in reversing the situation. For example, you have to build a death aura channel. The channel you are building now is connected to the moon and the stars. Once you reverse the situation, you can only reverse the moon and the stars. Or you can cut off the death aura channel to the moon and the stars. Only then can you think of a way to help the other undead reverse the situation. Also, you are too weak." Boom! Just as he finished speaking, Suyu broke through the air and threw a punch. The air trembled. This punch, other than not having opened his yang aperture, Suyu went all out. As the punch landed, he too's eyes flickered. He took the punch head-on and retreated a little. Suyu smiled and said, "Sir, I'm not considered too weak, right?" He too's face was full of surprise. How did this guy become so much stronger in such a short time? Suyu smiled and said, "Sir, I think that my improvement speed is still very fast. I can't reverse it now. I think that I might be able to give it a try soon. Also, sir, do you really want to wait 10 years before taking this passage? Sir, you probably don't know much about that place, but I know a lot of things. If I'm really strong enough, I can open that passage at any time." He too's eyes were strange. "You can open it at any time?" "Of course." He too fell into deep thought, but Suyu didn't say much. He asked again, "My lord, Where's that dull-witted undead sovereign? You're looking for him. I'm just asking about the situation. He seemed to be a human when he was alive, and it's possible that he's also a human in this tide change. I'm a little curious. In this era, which human could still be so powerful after death? He too wasn't the only one who was curious. In fact, he too was curious as well, he said, that's true. This tide change hasn't been activated for long. This guy knows the great Qin King. It's possible that he really is a dead spirit born from this tide change. After becoming a dead spirit, he's still so powerful. Could he have been an eternal Nine Dan before he died? Or was he extremely powerful and talented before he died and obtained benefits from the river of dead spirits? He didn't know much about it. Soon, he said, that guy was teleported back by me. However, after consuming the fruit of life and death, he lost control due to the conflict between the will of the living and the dead. Even if you find him, it won't be of much use. However, there's a high chance that he will come back to life on his own. Just like that, the dead souls recovered some of their memories. He too found it hard to control him. If we go there, we might run into him. As he too spoke, he looked at Su Yu and said, if you want to go there, then tell me first, what exactly is that place? Su Yu thought for a moment and said with a smile, I won't hide it from you, sir. I'm guessing that that place should be a special passage that corresponds to the starry mansions in the universe. There should be 360 big stars or portals. That's where the divine aperture opens. Then, he continued, the starry mansion was actually built by a living person. Do you know, sir? And this living person is terrifyingly powerful. The other party should have opened 360 yuan apertures and 360 divine apertures. What we sent over were the locations of his apertures. He too was stunned for a moment. He really didn't know. Of course, he had some guesses previously. At this moment, even though he too was dead, he was still a little shocked. He thought for a moment and said, when I was alive, I never heard of this news. He was the descendant of King Gong. He didn't even know about this news. Obviously, not many people knew about it. He added, when I was alive, I didn't even know about this passage in the dead soul's realm. It seems that no one has ever mentioned it before. Su Yu's words made him, who was already dead, even more curious. The face that you summoned before, is that him? He too was shocked. Is that person dead or alive? He's very powerful. When his face appeared, I thought that the human emperor had come back to life. At the side, Xingyu said impatiently, are we leaving or not? What was so strange about it? The starry mansion was built from a human corpse. Of course, not many people knew about it. The martial king mentioned it once and discussed it many people. After that, he kept quiet. He too was stunned, and so was Su Yu. The two of them looked at Xingyue. Xingyue said coldly, what are you looking at? I had some fragmented memories when I was alive. Is there a problem? If you mention it, I will remember some of it. If you don't mention it, I won't remember it either. He too was surprised. You. Who are you? Martial King. Martial King, you can come into contact with it. Strange. Xingyue said coldly, so what if I can come into contact with it? I'm already dead. Isn't it tiring to think about it all the time? Boring. He was already dead, yet he still thought about it all the time. How annoying. Su Yu was also curious. Lord Xingyue, who is Martial King? Do you know his name? How would I remember? Xingyue said impatiently, everyone calls him the Martial King. Who would still remember their names? On the other hand, he too, hearing this, he said, in ancient times, there were a few big shots. They were really big. The mighty mountain was in awe. The human emperor, King Wen, and the martial king were definitely among the top three. Of course, there might be a Time Master as well, but the Time Master was too mysterious. After saying that, he continued, not many people know what King Wen's name is. As for King Wu, he might be called Tai Shan. He was not too sure. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. Tai Shan. Old Zhou had been scolding Tai Shan all day. In other words, the one who killed old Zhou was actually King Wu. That powerful? Just look at how powerful old Zhou was. It was obvious from his previous actions. However, in ancient times, old Zhou had been killed by Tai Shan. In other words, Tai Shan was even stronger than old Zhou. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2731, Chapter 2731, Chapter 580 The Good Man He Too 5. Chapter 2731, Chapter 580 The Good Man He Too 5. The Martial King is Tai Shan. Lord He Too, are you sure the Martial King is Tai Shan? I don't really remember, I think so. After saying this, he too looked around, try not to mention the names of these existences. If you mention them too much while they are alive, they will definitely know. If they are dead, if they are revived in the dead soul realm, they will also sense such existences if you mention them. If he's still in the dead soul's realm, if you shout too much and revive him, it might cause a huge commotion. Even he too was extremely fearful of an existence like the Martial King. He was afraid that Su Yu didn't understand. He continued, in the ancient era, the human sovereign was the strongest. This is hard to say for now. However, the human sovereign is extremely powerful, and it's true that he can suppress all the worlds. King Wen and King Wu were actually a bit more powerful than the half-emperors in the ancient times. Only by suppressing them together could the three human experts suppress all the worlds. You should know that in that era, although the human emperor was powerful, it didn't mean that he was the only one who had transcended. Some half-emperors of powerful clans were not inferior to the human emperor in terms of cultivation realms. The human emperor could suppress them, and King Wen and King Wu had made great contributions. Only by combining the three of them could they suppress all the worlds in the universe. No one could do it without them. From this, we can see how powerful such an existence is. Su Yu understood. A transcendent? L defined it casually. He too didn't care too much about it. In ancient times, almost all the conferred dukes were at the Tao fusing realm. There are strong and weak in the Tao fusing realm, but the human emperor and the half-emperors of the various clans might be in another realm. The human emperor might also be in this realm. I define them as transcendents. At their level, they wouldn't care too much about these things. As he spoke, the moon and stars sneered, sneers way, what do not know, dare to deceive people. Not to mention other, at least as far as I know, king and king are not the same, the general king, such as King Gongdi's existence, and the general half-emperor, probably in the same class. And others, such as the immortal emperor, these beings, may be the same as the human emperor, these beings, at least divided into two classes. He too felt that she was mocking him. His gaze became much colder. King Gong, my ancestor. Alright, I don't feel much. I'm already dead, but I'm still a little unhappy. Who said that King Gong is on the weaker level? Su Yu was helpless against these two and could only quickly say, my lords, why don't we go over there and see how the situation is? Also, my lords are both experienced and knowledgeable. I think that there are some things that my lords must know. What? Su Yu condensed a flower petal in the air. Sir, he too, do you recognize this bloodline symbol after becoming a human king? Yes, the bloodline symbol. Su Yu saw it in his memory. He too and Xing Yu took a look at it when he just condensed this symbol. He too said disapprovingly, the mixed blood inheritance is not pure enough. That is the hell hibiscus flower, plus the flame pattern, the hell hibiscus flower. Let me think, it should be the inheritance of the ancient Hell King. If it is the flame pattern, then there are many possibilities. Because it is not pure enough, it is hard to judge the specifics. Ancient Hell King. Su Yu's heart moved slightly. So, the human race indeed had some human king bloodline, and the guy who seduced the leader of the Heavenly Divine sect was the descendant of the ancient Hell King. This was also the first time he confirmed the origin of the other party's bloodline. Su Yu quickly said, "Sir, under normal circumstances, would everyone deliberately reveal these symbols?" He too sneered, "Some people will. They will flaunt their noble status. When they see some subordinates or weaklings, they will tell them that my status is extremely noble and that I am a direct descendant of the ancient king. Of course, ordinary pure-blooded descendants rarely do it, but hybrid blood, it's not surprising. Hybrid blood is a very low existence in the ancient times. The bloodline of the human king is noble, how could it be mixed with other races?" Su Yu hurriedly said, "It can't be the bloodlines of two human kings." He too snorted and said, "What do you know? If both parties were human kings, the descendants born wouldn't form such a symbol. Such mixed symbols mean chaos. An authentic human king bloodline, even if the other party's parents are human kings, the one born is either a father or a mother bloodline symbol, or simply a special symbol of a new birth. It definitely wouldn't be such a messy symbol. This is the meaning of mixed blood. The descendant of a human king and a human king, that's not called mixed blood." He too explained. He knew more than Old Turtle. After all, Old Turtle was not a human, so he did not know much about this. And he too was an authentic descendant of a human king. After explaining this, he continued, "Where have you seen this symbol before? Has that person revealed it? If that's the case, that person must be a mixed blood. Furthermore, he should know some ancient secrets. Perhaps he has some inferiority complex and revealed the symbol in order to tell everyone that he is a descendant of a human king. In fact, such mixed blood is generally not recognized." Su Yu came to a realization. I was right. If the other party was truly powerful and could conceal his identity, there was no need for him to leave behind such a mark. In other words, the other party was intentionally revealing his identity. Regardless of whether one understood it or not, the other party was telling everyone that he was a descendant of the human king. A descendant of the prison king. Su Yu remembered that a hybrid might not be a pure human. Sure enough, to say that they know more, or these dead know more. Who said that the dead cannot speak? Isn't it, the dead also spoke? You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2732, Chapter 2732, Chapter 580 The Good He 26. Chapter 2732, Chapter 580 The Good He 26. Su Yu thought to himself, in the future, killing people to silence them may not be reliable anymore. I have to kill the spirits to silence them. It was not enough for people to die. If they wanted to remain hidden forever, they had to find the other party's dead spirit body and kill him. This was the way of the king. Otherwise, even the dead would speak. He too did not care about these things and quickly said, "I can bring you to take a look. But, Su Yu, if you dare to play tricks, I will kill you. Also, you have humiliated me before. I still remember this matter." On the side, Xingyue said coldly, "So what if you humiliated me? Come at me, he too, I am not afraid of you." He too cursed in his heart. "What's wrong with you? I am talking to Su Yu, why are you interrupting?" Su Yu immediately shut up. "Xingyue wants to stand up, so you two can fight. I only want to go and take a look at the distribution of the divine aperture. It would be best if one can see the operating route, but it doesn't matter if it doesn't work. First, let me open my yin aperture. If I don't open my yin aperture, I keep feeling like I'm going to explode." He too seems to be quite easy to talk to. He's such a good person. One didn't even try to fool you. He too, who had been given the good person card, was thinking. Xingyu's mansion was built by a living person. Then, was he dead or alive? If he was still alive, could he be subdued? As for Su Yu, he decided to go and take a look. He realized that Su Yu knew a lot of things. A group of 3 people, 2 dead and 1 half dead. They quickly flew into the sky and flew toward the depths of the dead soul's realm. At the same time, in the ancient city of Xinghong, more and more experts were gathered in the vicinity. The news of Su Yu's entry seemed to have been guessed and leaked. Many people were trying to determine whether Su Yu was in the city or not. In the city lord's manor, Lu Hong walked into the back hall and looked at Xing Hong. He bowed and said, "My lord, we can't go on like this. We have to find an opportunity to intimidate Su Yu again and make sure that he is here. Otherwise, even if Su Yu can come out, it will be very difficult for him to return to the city." Xing Hong opened his eyes and nodded slightly. Indeed, he had to let others know that Su Yu was here. Otherwise, if Su Yu came out, it would be difficult for him to return to the ancient city even though the distance was not far. Wait a little longer. If anyone dares to provoke me, I will take action. Lu Hong bowed and retreated. Very good. Once someone provokes you, you can leave. It seems like Xingyue hasn't been around. Not bad. I can go down now. The dead soul realm is filled with dangers. It's not bad for me to improve myself. I can leave within a month. There are still 10 days left. Within 10 days, I have to leave. Before that brat Su Yu returns. Little Su Yu, you're still too inexperienced. I'll be leaving soon. Lu Hong sighed in his heart and smiled. Su Yu was indeed amazing. He had planned everything, but he didn't expect that I would dare to go to the dead soul realm. Are you afraid? Even if you return, one won't be around anymore. Goodbye, Su Yu. At this moment, Lu Hong was filled with endless emotions. He looked at the city lord's mansion, then looked around, then looked at Xing Hong behind him. He floated up and looked at the outside world. He went to the dead soul realm. I might not have the chance to see the beautiful scenery in the outside world again. I hope everything goes smoothly. He looked at the group of invincible experts outside and sneered. With infinite disdain, he said in a clear voice, "A group of idiots. What are you looking at? Do you still dare to enter the city and beat me up? Trash. Arrogant." His arrogance made many people confused once again. Was this fellow really not Su Yu? F***ck, he was so arrogant. To be honest, even if he said that he wasn't Su Yu, they wouldn't believe it. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2733, Chapter 2733, Chapter 581, Stupefied. Show subscribe, L. Chapter 2733, Chapter 581, Stupefied. Show subscribe, L. The Dead Soul World. An angry shout rang out, "How dare you? Who dares to cross my world?" In the air, he too was all smiles as he said in a clear voice, "Blade Wolf Sovereign, it's me, he too. I'm passing by this place and returning to Hong Meng." In the distance, in the air, an extremely powerful dead soul sovereign appeared. He had the body of a wolf and his pitch-black eyes swept over the few people. Very soon, he saw Xing Yu and snorted coldly, "Xingyue, you dared to barge into my territory previously. If it wasn't for the fact that I didn't want to be entangled with you any longer, I wouldn't have spared you." Xingyue looked at it coldly and transmitted her voice to Su Yu, "Kill it, together." Su Yu. "Xingyue, you've changed." On the side, he too was also speechless. He transmitted his voice, "Don't cause trouble. It's not good to kill the undead sovereign here. Besides, we're all family, we'll need it sooner or later. After saying that, he too smiled and said, Blade Wolf Monarch, Xingyue didn't do it by accident. Something important happened earlier and the Starry Mansion was in a riot. For my sake, next time we have the chance to hold a banquet to apologize to Blade Wolf Monarch. Starry Mansion in a riot? The giant wolf muttered and looked at the others. It snorted, this time, for the sake of he too, we'll let it go. If there's a next time, we'll definitely not let you off. Xingyu looked at it coldly. Sooner or later, she would beat you to death. Suyu did not want to be a busybody. At least, he did not want to do so now. His goal was to look at the divine aperture map. It would be easy to beat this guy to death. He would have to wait until his divine aperture opened. Now that Xingyu was easy to talk to, Suyu could come down from the ancient city of Xinghong at any time. Suyu comforted, Sir, don't worry. In a few days, I'll beat it to death and eat wolf meat. Humph, this kind of trash is disgusting. Xingyu's face was indifferent. She couldn't even be bothered to look at the giant wolf. On the way, this situation had already happened for the third time. If Suyu was the social butterfly of the living world, then he too was the social butterfly of the dead world. He was familiar with all the monarchs in the vicinity. He could even call out their names and chat with them. Soon, a group of people flew past the monarch's kingdom. It was a wasteland. In the middle of the wasteland, some monarchs built huge palaces, some simply built shacks, and some didn't even have shacks. These monarchs seemed to be in a miserable state. Of course, Suyu saw quite a few scattered dead souls. Some of the monarchs might have recovered their memories quite well when they were alive, or they might even be generals. In the kingdom, there was an army of dead souls that was organized. It was easy to manage. The undead were also easy to deal with. They did not need to eat or drink. They just needed to absorb some of the aura of death. In such a country, monarchs were usually stronger. In the scattered countries, some monarchs had just been enlightened and were still ignorant. In two places, the monarchs were as dumb as dummies. They watched them fly away and were too lazy to move. If they didn't cause trouble for the undead, they wouldn't bother to cause trouble for them either. He too almost went down to trick them into becoming thugs. In the end, he might have felt that the other party was too weak, so he didn't fall down. At this moment, Suyu was flying and also feeling suffocated. After passing through the ruler's country, he couldn't help but say, this damn place is too stuffy. Living people can suffocate here. He too and Xingyu looked at him faintly. What are you talking about? Suyu was speechless and quickly said, My lords, what do the undead monarchs usually do? He too smiled and said, they do a lot of things. First, they gather the undead army and prepare to attack the living world. Second, they fight against Old Turtle. They don't give him peace, so he doesn't have time to digest the aura of death. Thirdly, he had to rope in the sovereign and prepare for a great battle. Fourthly, he had to explore the dead soul's heavenly river when he had time, so that he could become powerful. Fifthly. Anyway, he had a lot of things to do, so he was very busy. As for Xingyue, after holding it in for a long time, she said sullenly, cultivate. That was it. She didn't care too much about the rest. Suyu was speechless. You're really boring. You've been cultivating until now, but you're still not that strong. Look at he too, his life is still very comfortable. He's so busy. As expected of the key figure of the first title change. Suyu was still very interested in he too. When he too said so, he smiled and said, Lord he too, I'm curious about something. How did you manage to lead the undead army into the living realm back then? This was very important. Extremely important. He too chuckled and said, You want to learn? A little. Why should I tell you? Suyu thought for a moment, then, he said, Fate. When we were alive, we were all humans. We were all masters of Hongmeng City, and we all had 360 yuan apertures. We all learned the reversal method of our yuan apertures. We were all men, and we all went to the Starry Palace. So, my lord, our fate is too great. He too was speechless. Not to mention, they really did have a little bit of fate. Hearing Su Yu's words, he too said with a faint smile, "You want to lure the sovereign of the dead spirit into battle? Actually, it's not difficult. Since you know the origin aperture reversal method, you can naturally reverse the yuan qi and turn it into the aura of death. When the aura of death is too dense in an area, you will vaguely realize that the boundary wall is weak. Once you break through the boundary, you will be able to lure the sovereign of the dead spirit out. Of course, we have to discuss this beforehand. Otherwise, if the sovereign of the dead spirit comes out uncontrollably, you are asking for trouble." He too sighed, "Everything went smoothly for me back then. In the end, some disobedient undead monarchs appeared. They killed and converted the undead randomly, which caused Old Turtle to get angry. Bad luck. On the side, Xingyu mocked, serves you right. Undead monarchs aren't so easy to control." You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2734, Chapter 2734, Chapter 581, Dumb, 2. Chapter 2734, Chapter 581, Dumb, 2. He too sneered, "What do you know? What do you know?" There was indeed an accident. Back then, he had already negotiated with some monarchs in the realm of the dead souls, but he was tricked by a few monarchs who were passing by. Those bastards were extremely excited when they saw that there was a hole for them to get out of. He too didn't mind them coming out directly. He was busy at the time, but these bastards killed anyone they saw. This caused him to be unlucky. He too continued, "However, even if you were lured out, it wouldn't be easy to control it. It would be too easy for you to lose control and cause chaos in the rules. In the living soul realm, the rules are those 36 guards. These people represent the rules. Old Turtle, don't think that I'm helping you now. Hee, when that time comes, I'll kill you too." Su Yu nodded slightly and thought for a moment. Back then, when Sir led the undead sovereign into battle, he didn't violate the rules in the beginning. Su Yu fell into deep thought. Very quickly, he said, "First, the undead are under Sir's control. Second, the ancient city's aura of death has been drawn away by Sir. Third, try to let the enemy touch the rules first. Fourth, don't kill the innocent. Fifth, don't let the death aura spread. Your Excellency, did you satisfy these rules?" "Almost." He too was a little surprised. He looked at him and said with a faint smile, "If you satisfy these rules, you can almost lead the undead to run amok. But there is one important point. You have to wipe your ass and constantly absorb the death aura. Don't let the death aura spread." In fact, the most important point of the rules was to not let the death aura spread to the living world. He too continued, "In the living world, you have to recover the death aura that you created in 3 days at most. Get rid of it. Once the death aura spreads, you will be finished." He too sighed. He had suffered such a loss in the past. Those bastards could not be controlled and ran around randomly. He went all over the world to wipe his ass, but in the end, it was useless. They were at least at the monarch level and ran too fast. Damn it, he had been cheated to death by them. He then pointed at Su Yu and said, "Also, remember, maintain the principle of equivalent exchange." "What?" Su Yu was puzzled. He too explained, "How many dead souls have you killed? You'd better kill as many dead souls as you can to maintain the principle of equivalent exchange. Life and death balance. It didn't matter if it was slightly out of balance. Once too many dead souls were killed, more dead souls would be born in the dead souls realm, and there would be fewer living souls. It didn't conform to the principle of equivalent exchange. You would also face the punishment of the rules. Su Yu remembered this point. Sure enough, the old man knew a lot. If he tried to figure it out himself, it would be easy to trigger some rules. On the side, Xingyue glanced at Su Yu and said coldly, "L won't fight for you. Just give up." Su Yu nodded and looked indifferent. "Sir, you'd better cultivate in the tunnel. Don't get into trouble. If something happens, I'm worried that I'll lose my position as the city lord." He too smiled. "It's fine. If Xingyue dies, I can switch you. Forget it, you're a little dangerous. I see that your heavenly aperture has only opened halfway. If you do anything reckless, I'm afraid that you'll suck me to death." Obviously, he knew a little more. He added, "You dare to open your heavenly aperture so casually? How audacious. In our era, it wasn't that no one knew how to open the heavenly aperture, but, under normal circumstances, even if they knew, they wouldn't open it unless it was a life-and-death battle. If they opened it, it would be troublesome. Could civilized masters ensure that they could open 360 yuan apertures? Could fighters ensure that they could open 360 divine apertures? If they couldn't guarantee that their heavenly apertures weren't perfect, they would torture themselves to death. Therefore, for those who opened the heavenly aperture, either both of them were perfect, or they were just a little short of perfect. If they could just barely open it, they could seal it. Su Yu nodded and said helplessly, "L fumbled around on my own, how would I know about this? Monster." He too cursed in his heart. He had to admit that this kid was a monster. If he could figure it out himself, what else could he say? Under normal circumstances, no one would open the 360 yuan aperture now. The heavenly aperture would become an ancient legend. In the end, Su Yu had already opened it. "Are you sure you can open the divine aperture and complete the opening of the yin aperture? Once you can't. This so-called yang aperture of yours will suck you to death sooner or later. The stronger you are, the stronger the suction. How long do you think the star moon can support you?" Su Yu did not say a word. "Let's give it a try. One should be fine." It was only 360 divine apertures. Now that Su Yu had opened 290 of them, he actually did not feel that it was that difficult. "My talent is very strong." Su Yu even doubted himself. "What's wrong with my talent? It's too amazing." There were some things that he could not judge for himself. Was this talent related to the golden book in his mind, or was it brought on by himself? If it was something that came with it, that would be a little scary. It would be more normal if the golden book was modified. Su Yu thought to himself. If the golden book was really left behind by a time master from the previous era, it might be very powerful. It wouldn't be strange for it to modify his talent. This time, Su Yu wasn't here to explore the undead realm. He had important things to do. He had to hurry. The faster the better. Without delay, he continued to fly crazily for a while and passed by the territory of several dead soul lords. Soon, they approached a huge river that stretched across the sky and earth. "The passage is near there." He too pointed to the front and said with a smile, "I'll just talk to the idiot," and saw that a black hole opened up there. "It's the scene you mentioned. There are no other dead soul lords nearby." While he too was talking, a roar came from afar. He too felt like slapping his face. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2735, Chapter 2735, Chapter 581, Foolish, 3. Chapter 2735, Chapter 581, Foolish, 3. A war between monarchs. You're not giving me, he too, any face. Is he too shameless? I just said that there are no monarchs here, and you're already having a war. Needless to say, Suyu and he too instantly restrained their auras and were about to fly in that direction. Xingyu was just about to explode her aura and tell the other monarchs that Star Moon Monarch, am here. She stomped her feet and suddenly felt that the two behind her did not move. She quickly stopped and looked back, she was speechless. Was she supposed to restrain her aura? Shouldn't the sovereign be fair and square? Which sovereign of the dead spirit was supposed to restrain her aura? Xingyu's mind went blank. Very quickly and unnaturally, she restrained her aura bit by bit. Suyu took a look at he too. He too was calm. It was a natural habit. Even if he died, he had maintained this habit for a long time. Don't look too much. 3. As he too spoke, he sensed for a while and said uncertainly, 2 against 1. Is he a fool? The fool might have returned here. Could he have been targeted by another undead sovereign? He was not sure. The aura of death was not easy to judge. A powerful undead like the fool did not recover much of its memory. A fool would easily be targeted. It was easier to kill him, and killing him would bring great benefits. The few fighting in the distance were not weak. It was possible that a top-tier undead had targeted Dummy. He too thought for a moment, then suddenly looked at Suyu and said, your aura is weak. Just follow me. Xingyue, don't follow me. Just stay here. I'll go and check out the situation. If you're really going to deal with Dummy. Suyu quickly continued, get close to him first and take the opportunity to attack him. We can't expose ourselves at this stage. Kill the 2 undead lords. Lord He too will pretend to help them. I'll pretend to be an invincible undead and sneak attack them. That's right. He too nodded, looking very satisfied. It was easier to talk to a living person. If you were to talk to a fool or Xingyue, it would be very troublesome. Xingyue might scold you. The Lord would not be so shameless. A boring undead. He too still wanted to be resurrected. In the world of the undead, it was too boring. That was why he too helped Suyu and brought him here after Suyu said a few words. He also hoped that Suyu would be able to resurrect the undead. At that time, even if he was under Suyu's control, he would still be resurrected. If he was alive, everything would be easy to talk about. As for Suyu, he did not forget to brush Xingyue off. He said seriously, Sir, this place is very important. Sir, stay at the outer perimeter. If we make a mistake and someone runs away, I hope Sir can stop them. Otherwise, we will be in big trouble. Xingyue did not like the way he too spoke. When she heard Suyu's words, she felt relieved and said coldly, I have my own plans. Okay, done. There was nothing else to do. Xingyue would stay here obediently, and Suyu quickly said, Sir, it's best if you find a safe place. At the critical moment, I might be able to borrow your strength. This time, Xingyue did not speak, but she was a little fearful. I have to find a safe place. It's not because I'm afraid of danger, but because I'm afraid that Suyu will suck me dry and see my powerless appearance. That won't do. Soon, Suyu and he too restrained their auras and flew forward. The dead soul's heavenly river was getting closer and closer. The aura of death was getting denser and denser. Suyu opened some of his young apertures to absorb the aura of death, so that it wouldn't be too dense and cause his heart to explode. Gradually, Suyu saw the scene in front of him. There were indeed 3 dead souls fighting under the heavenly river. They didn't say anything and were fighting in silence. One of them was somewhat familiar, and that was Dummy. At this moment, Dummy might have been injured in the battle with Xuehua. His aura of death was a little weak, and he was surrounded by 2 armored undead. He too's expression changed slightly, he transmitted his voice, they are one of the overlords of the nearby area, the Tiger Clan's 2 heroes. Both of them have the strength of an eternal 7th stage. They are close to our Hongmeng kingdom and have fought a few times. These two brothers seemed to be from the ancient times. The two overlords of the Tiger clan were killed by peerless experts at the same time. They were revived at the same time, and at the same time, they revived. In the undead realm, they established the Double Tiger Death Kingdom. They are difficult to deal with, and they have a bad temper. I tried to subdue them a few times, but they rejected me. From the looks of it, the fool was severely injured, and his aura of death was seeping out. He was targeted by the two brothers, and they were prepared to kill him, devour his aura of death, and absorb his mark of the dead. It wasn't easy to deal with him, and it was a little difficult to ambush him. The two of them know me, so they can't be considered good friends. There were also a few fellows who were difficult to deal with, such as the two of them. He too had tried to convince them several times, and even fought them a few times, but it was all to no avail. These two were stubborn and couldn't win against he too in a one-on-one fight. However, once they joined forces, he too wouldn't be able to win against them. After fighting for a few times and failing to subdue them, he too couldn't be bothered to care anymore. He didn't expect to meet them here. Suyu didn't mind and quickly said, "Sir, then I'll pretend to be an unconscious undead and wander over." Stupid, an unconscious undead would be afraid of the undead sovereign and wouldn't dare to approach it. How could it wander over? Was that so? Suyu had an idea. He quickly said, "Then I'll pretend to be a greedy undead and wander around nearby, intending to take advantage of the situation. My aura isn't strong. If these two are really overbearing, I definitely won't like it. One of them will definitely attack me. I'll take the opportunity to kill him." "Sir, go and sneak attack the other one." "Are you sure?" He too said worriedly, "I'll often meet some unreliable people. It's easy to mess up a small matter. Are you sure you can do it?" You're tuning into the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2736, Chapter 2736, Chapter 581, Stupefaction. Show subscribe, 4. Chapter 2736, Chapter 581, Stupefaction. Show subscribe, 4. Of course. Suyu was speechless. Of course I was certain about such a small matter. If I went all out, I would open my young aperture and instantly explode. With a punch, even if I couldn't kill the other party, it wouldn't be difficult for me to cripple the other party. An undead had fewer means than a living person to begin with. The only thing they were afraid of was the aura of death. Suyu wasn't afraid at all. When an undead fought with a living person, their greatest weapon was the aura of death. It was easy to corrode the other party, and it was very easy to corrode the other party into an undead. This would suppress the other party's yuan qi. This was the true strength of an undead. Without this, an undead wouldn't be able to use any means, rule power, or intelligence among those of the same level as him. He would be an existence that would be easily defeated. Suyu didn't say anything else and quickly disappeared. His aura was slightly revealed. He looked a little sneaky with a hint of greed. At this moment, he was wandering a few thousand meters away from the three great undead. He bent his body and moved his feet with a hint of greed and desire. He carefully moved in that direction. The three great undead that were fighting had actually discovered him. The Tiger brothers sensed him slightly and scoffed. Weaklings. He was almost invincible, or perhaps he had just barely stepped into the ranks of a sovereign of the undead. Even though he was slightly intelligent, his desires were greater than his intelligence. To think that he would dare to hide his tracks right under their noses and even try to take a share of the spoils. "Second brother, go and kill him." "No, boss, you go." The two brothers tried to shift the blame to one another. The fellow before them was going to be done for. This was a huge fish. If he were to devour him, the two of them might be able to advance to the next level. However, the prerequisite was that if one of them were to devour him, it would be a little difficult for the two of them to split him up. Now that one of them was here to pick up the scraps, he would usually be eager to eat one of them. However, compared to the one before him, that one was too weak. The two of them were worried that if they were to leave, the other party would quickly kill the other party and take all of this for himself. Second brother, you go. The Tiger Clan's undead boss transmitted his voice, don't worry, this one won't die so quickly. If you kill him and come back, it's still not too late. Don't give that little fellow any chance. Once you make a move at the crucial moment and spoil our good deed, it'll be too late to regret it. Such a powerful undead sovereign has just recovered, and his spiritual wisdom has yet to fully recover. He's even injured. I don't know who did it, but let's end this quickly so that the people who injured him earlier won't rush over. Second brother was somewhat unwilling, but what boss said was also true. After struggling for a bit, second brother quickly flew towards Suyu. His speed was extremely fast, reaching several thousand meters in the blink of an. As for Suyu, when he saw second brother charging over, his black face collapsed, and he instantly fled backwards. Humph. That Tiger Clan's second brother was very dissatisfied. Run. Where can you run to? You're delaying my matters. If the boss took the opportunity to kill that fellow, then he would be able to devour less. He hurriedly chased after Suyu, his speed was very fast, and his sharp claws clawed at the back of Suyu's head. I'll kill you, you reckless little fellow. I don't know where you came from, how audacious. Suyu quickly fled, and he still looked somewhat clumsy. He felt helpless in his heart. As expected, the undead were easy to deceive. The other party didn't even bother to investigate. That's right. Since he was already dead, didn't the undead sovereign conceal his strength very rarely? Perhaps. Forget it. Today, Suyu had taught everyone a lesson. Even if he was dead, he had to be careful. If he was schemed against, he would die a second time, and he wouldn't be able to resurrect again. At this moment, his young aperture opened, and the seal on his heart was slowly lifted. The aura of death began to spread, absorbing the power of the stars and moons. There was only one thing to do, and that was to kill this fellow with a single punch. If he couldn't kill him, then he would just have to punch him twice more. From behind, the Tiger Clan's second younger brother caught up with him. His speed was extremely fast, and he appeared behind Suyu in an instant. He clawed at Suyu's head and said coldly, "You're courting death, little fellow." On the other hand, Suyu suddenly turned his head and punched out with his full strength. The other party didn't even bother to dodge. Such a fellow would definitely be able to take his punch completely. By the way, will I get a reward for killing the sovereign spirit? Suyu thought to himself as he threw a punch. There might not be any reward. He had killed many undead in the past, and there wasn't any reward either. The undead did have blood essence, but it wasn't of much use to Suyu. No, that's not right. I might be able to open up a page of the undead atlas. Suyu thought to himself. Yes, it was time to open up the undead atlas. It would be a waste not to include such a powerful undead in the book. Undead were also a race. Even if they weren't, it was still up to him to decide whether he wanted to include his book or not. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out. The Tiger Clan's second brother didn't even have the time to say anything. There was only shock and surprise. It was as if he had been punched by someone. Counterkilled. With a loud boom, he was torn into pieces. His bones were scattered everywhere, and blood splattered everywhere. It was all black blood. In the distance, the tiger was stunned for a moment. He looked over, and just as he turned his head, a palm struck him from behind. He too was very excited at this moment. He sighed. As expected, it was still a pleasure for living people to work together. Suyu had killed him without hesitation. Damn it, it had been too difficult to work with other dead spirits in the past. He would drop the ball at the critical moment. This time, he could finally get rid of these two brothers. These two brothers were his biggest enemies in this area. Once he got rid of them, he would be in charge of this area. He too was very happy. He struck out with his palm, and with a bang, Tiger Boss' undead body cracked. On the other side, the dazed man followed up with a punch, and Tiger Boss was smashed into pieces. Dull-witted looking at he too also ignored him, quickly chase. You're tuning into the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2737, Chapter 2737, Chapter 581 Stupor. 5. Chapter 2737, Chapter 581 Stupor. 5. Even though the battle had broken into pieces, the undead lords would not die so easily. They had to kill those bodies one by one. At the same time, Su Yu quickly took out a book. The book covered the sky and earth. Several hundred illusory images of the sun and moon appeared, crazily devouring the scattered bodies of the undead. Soon, pieces of black flesh were devoured. In the end, Su Yu grabbed a crystal-like crystal and showed a suspicious look. Was this the mark of the dead souls? Anyway, he didn't have it when he killed those weak dead souls. This thing dropped when he killed this guy. What was the use of this thing? Previously, he too and Xing Yu said that the main thing that the dead souls devoured was the aura of death and the mark of the dead souls. Could this be it? At this moment, there seemed to be something struggling in the crystal-like object. It seemed to be Tiger number 2. Su Yu did not think too much and quickly sealed the heart. Then, he suppressed the object in the book and quickly flew in that direction. A moment later, he too was beaming with joy. He laughed and said, Su Yu, you're not bad. It's a small matter. Su Yu also laughed. This undead was very stupid. It was not difficult to kill it. Indeed, it was not a big deal. It felt even easier than killing the crippled blood fire. On the blood fire side, there was at least the danger of capsizing, but this one, there was almost no danger. He too said excitedly, this is not a small matter. I have always found it difficult to deal with these two working together. I have contacted the other monarchs several times. It's really too much. Every time when it comes to the critical moment, there will be a mistake. I haven't succeeded once. I'm so angry that I want to kill someone. Su Yu laughed and saw that he was holding a crystal-like object in his hand. He asked, Sir, is this the undead mark? He too laughed and said, Good stuff. These two brothers were both ancient figures. After they were revived, they both had the strength of an eternal 7 Dan. When the undead mark is swallowed, it will strengthen our undead mark, recover more memories, and recover more memories from our previous lives. There are benefits to both developing spiritual wisdom and strengthening strength. After saying this, he looked at Su Yu and said, You should have taken one as well. Since you don't need it, why don't you give it to me? I'll give it to you if I have any treasures that one can't use later. Su Yu grinned and said, Forget it this time. This is for Star Moon Sovereign. In the distance, Star Moon walked over with a weak expression. When she heard this, she said with a cold expression, Don't need it. Su Yu grinned and said, My lord, I'm your subordinate. Have you forgotten? What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. My lord, this is called being contributed by your subordinate. You can just reward me with some treasures later. It was the same old routine. However, Xing Yue just fell for it. When she heard this, she pretended to be silent and said coldly, When I have the treasures, PLL kill a few Ians and seize their carriers. Then, I'll reward you. Thank you, sir. As Su Yu said this, he threw the crystal over. Xing Yu received it with satisfaction. She was very satisfied. She could not kill the Hu brothers. If she could, she would have killed them long ago. This time, she had picked up a treasure. Not bad. Xing Yu reluctantly praised him. This subordinate of mine is not bad. He is average. He barely meets my desire. It seems that the conversion back then was not too bad. She looked at he too provocatively. Remember, this is my subordinate, not yours. He too couldn't even be bothered with her. He took a piece and it wasn't bad. At this moment, he looked at the dazed look and said in surprise, after swallowing a life and death fruit, why do I feel that his intelligence is still very average? He felt a little strange and looked at the dazed look. Dummy, do you still remember me? He too. The dazed man replied and looked at he too with a dazed expression. He too nodded. It was all right. At least he didn't forget me. Idiot, you seem to have recovered some of your memories. Who are you again? The dazed man looked at he too and then at Su Yu. After a long while, his eyes became clear and dazed. After a long while, he said with difficulty, the Tomb Keeper. He too was slightly stunned. Tomb Keeper. Which Tomb Keeper? There are many Tomb Keepers. However, Su Yu's eyes flickered and he quickly said, Tomb Keeper. King. Wen's tomb? His stunned eyes struggled for a while before he nodded slightly. The Tomb Keeper of the previous generation. Su Yu frowned. Tomb Keeper. The one who got the tombstone seemed to be the Tomb Keeper, right? He hurriedly asked, do you know Lu Wenyan? Was this Yi Badian? He was dazed and didn't have any reaction. Where's Yi Badian? He was still dazed and seemed to be in deep thought. As for Su Yu, he raised his eyebrows again. He didn't know Yi Badian. The Tomb Keeper, could it be related to the Polytheistic Literature Department? Polytheistic Literature Department, 1st generation Xia Chen, 3rd generation Nan Wujiang, 5th generation Yi Badian. This could be considered a system. In fact, the 2nd and 4th generations were not Polytheistic Literature Department. The real inheritance was Xia Chen, the Southern Borderless Yi Badian, Yun Chen, the 10,000 Heavenly Saints Lu Wenyan, Xia Longwu, Hong Tan Bai Feng, Chen Yong Su Yu, Wu Jia. At this moment, when he heard the name of the Tomb Keeper, Su Yu's eyes flickered, and he suddenly shouted, Xia Chen Manor Head. The 3rd generation did not die. Yi Badian did not seem to have inherited the title of the Tomb Keeper. Instead, he was a titled general, the Tomb Keeper. Xia Chen. The 1st generation. Su Yu felt a little incredulous. The 1st generation Xia Chen was indeed familiar with the great Qin king. He was from the same generation as the great Xia king. He was the cousin of the great Xia king and not his biological brother. Xia Chen had founded the Great Xia Civilization Academy, the Holy Land of Exploration, and the Multi-God Literature Department. It could be said that without Xia Chen, there would not have been many things to follow up. There were many people. Su Yu was not too sure how Xia Chen had died. Xia Chen did not seem to have attained the Tao. Then, would such a powerful daze be Xia Chen now? The dazed eyes were a little conflicted. Looking at Su Yu, his gaze trembled. You are. Do you know the Southern Borderless? Beside him, he too quickly said, don't ask. Memories are surging. If it doesn't work, eat a death spirit imprint to stabilize it. Xia Chen. Interesting. The 10th Tide Flows Divine Languages Pathfinder. He knew Xia Chen. Not only him, but Xing Yu also knew Xia Chen. At this moment, she was also a little strange. She said, he is Xia Chen. I saw Xia Chen once. He was dressed in white like snow. He was a man and a sword. He wandered the heavens and ruled the world. Is he that stupid? Su Yu was speechless. Nonsense. He was already dead. What else do you want? By the way, what the hell is dressed in white like snow? Wasn't he talking about me? Did Xia Chen have such a hobby? He looked at Dazedly again. Dazedly was struggling violently at this moment. He gritted his black teeth and struggled for a long time before saying, "L. Guard the tomb. Tombstone, omen. Multi-god text, discard this item." With a rumble, Dazedly punched the ground. His aura erupted and he quickly regained his calm. The nature of an undead suppressed that strand of memory and returned to Dazedly again. Beside him, he too rubbed his chin and smiled. Don't ask any more. He's being suppressed again. It seems like he has a big secret. Maybe he sealed his memory before he died. After he died, it would be even more difficult to unseal and revive him. Su Yu, on the other hand, was shocked. When tombstone? Ominous? This wasn't the first time he heard these words, but he didn't feel anything. Even a big shot like Old Turtle had said this before. Such a big shot wouldn't just casually say it. Could there really be a problem? But he really didn't feel anything. He looked at the dazed man again and frowned. Was this Xia Chen? The first generation, tomb keeper. Did he get the tombstone and become a tomb keeper, or? Xia Chen was a tomb keeper from the start. The ruins had always been under his control, but he had stolen the tombstone and walked out of the ruins. These two were completely different concepts. At this moment, many thoughts rose in Su Yu's mind. When I go back, I must understand Xia Chen's matter. Previously, because he didn't pay too much attention to the first generation and didn't care too much, he actually didn't know much about the first generation. Compared to the fifth generation, the first generation was much less famous. Su Yu didn't even know Xia Chen's name at the Institute of Civilization. It was only when he saw Xia Chen's name on the 100-Path Pavilion that he knew that this was the first generation. He wasn't too sure how the first generation died. All he knew was that he left behind a secret realm of the Sea of Consciousness. A secret realm of the Sea of Consciousness, this wasn't a trashy secret realm. Maybe the Southern Borderless knows something. The Southern Borderless was the disciple of the first generation. The first generation died quite early and died not long after the establishment of the Institute. Could there be another reason? The key was, if this was the first generation, why was it so strong? He Too's revival was only at Eternal 7 Dan. Dummy's strength was not much weaker than He Too's. Could it be that it was also at Eternal 9 Dan when it was alive? Was this not a joke? At this moment, Su Yu could not wait to let Dummy recover its memory. Tell me, why is the tombstone ominous? You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2738, Chapter 2738, Chapter 583, Opening the Divine Aperture of the Universe. L. Chapter 2738, Chapter 583, Opening the Divine Aperture of the Universe. L. He was in a daze for a while, unable to explain why. However, the other party was very likely to be Xia Chen, the first-generation head prefect. Su Yu looked at him in a daze. At this moment, there was an inexplicable sense of melancholy. The first-generation head prefect could be considered to have left a heavy mark in the history of the 10th Tide, the history of the human race. The 10th Tide, the creator of the many divine runes. But now, he had also become an undead spirit whose nature suppressed human nature. The mark of the undead, or the fruit of life and death, could allow the other party to recover some of his memories. Su Yu was not interested in anything else but the tombstone. He was extremely interested in it. Suddenly, he looked at He Tuesday. He Too's expression changed. Why are you looking at me? You just took a mark of the undead. You gave the star and moon away, but you won't take it back. He too was a smart man. Even though he had turned into a necromancer, he understood the meaning in Su Yu's eyes. As for Su Yu, he was all smiles. He transmitted his voice, "Sir, you're too powerful. It's useless to take one. If you need it, we'll work together later. Necromancer Sovereign, don't have too many necromancers in the necromancer realm. After I open my divine aperture, I'll kill as many as I want. This is an investment. It's not too risky." In Su Yu's eyes, Undead Sovereign was like a cabbage. He could kill anyone he wanted. He too's eyes were depressed. He glanced at Su Yu. "Not too risky. I think it's very risky. After you go out, I'm afraid you'll be in trouble." "Do you really think? One don't know." "What a joke. A person like you is destined to not live in peace. Once you go out, there would be many dangers. A risk-free investment." Su Yu said telepathically, "Sir, you and I are both trendsetters of the same era. You should understand that it's not easy for us to die. Even if we die, it won't be now. At the very least, it's enough to make up for it." He, the trendsetter of the second tide, died very quickly. Just as he emerged, he was slapped to death by a passing half-emperor. Su Yu was speechless and stuttered, "Human. That's right." He too said calmly, "He's human. He just popped out and attained immortality. He's a level 4 eternal warrior who killed a level 7 eternal warrior. There's nothing else. I wonder which old antique passed by and killed him." Su Yu cursed inwardly. Holy sh*t. There was such a thing. It was really pitiful. As expected, the myriad realms were vast, and there were all kinds of wonders. The pitiful Destiny's child of the era was able to kill an eternal 7 Dan expert. His strength was definitely not weak, but he was actually killed by the old monster in the end. What a grievance. Just thinking about it made him feel stifled. "Sir, has the other party turned into an undead?" "I'm not sure about that." He too shook his head. The undead realm was so vast. Even if he hadn't traveled all over, how would he know what the situation was like? Moreover, some people wouldn't tell him their past identities or simply forget about them. He couldn't be bothered to say more. He glanced at Dummy and casually threw the mark of the undead over. With his strength, consuming the mark of the undead of the same level didn't help much, but it was still very useful. However, what Su Yu said made sense. It was better to invest a little. Working with Su Yu was still quite smooth. Dummy took the crystal and was a little stunned. He too said in a bad mood, "One absorbed it." Dummy looked at the crystal blankly. His instinct took over. Very soon, he started to absorb the crystal bit by bit. He too quickly said, "Let's go. This place is quite noisy. Maybe there will be undead coming to investigate soon. It won't be a matter of time before he finishes absorbing this thing." Su Yu nodded. The few of them walked deeper. The black hole was over there. At the same time, in the Dead Souls realm, in a slightly prosperous country, there was a huge ancient city and a pitch-black palace. In the palace, many figures were walking around. The Dead Souls realm was not nearly invincible. Almost all of them had no consciousness and were drifting around randomly. At this moment, in a corner of the palace, in a huge hall, a few dead souls were sitting cross-legged. In front of them was a huge mirror. It was a floor-to-ceiling mirror, and it was similar in shape to the induction jade mirror of the Great Ming Mansion. At this moment, a dead soul suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the black specks of light in the mirror. Just a moment ago, the 2 specks of light had disappeared. The dead soul frowned slightly. The Tiger Clan's 2 heroes have disappeared in the eastern 28th region. Record it down. I don't know if they were killed or dragged away by the rules. He too, Xing Yu, and the one who just woke up are nearby. As he spoke, he looked at the side of He too and the others. There was an inconspicuous speck of light that was slightly dark and had some blood-red color. He frowned and said, "Is there an outsider beside He too and Xing Yu?" The smaller undead next to the undead also opened its eyes and looked. After a while, it said, "It's hard to tell. Should we send someone to take a look? It could be a newly converted undead, or it could be a half-undead. Forget it. The eastern 28th region is quite far. They've already disappeared." Then the undead that spoke earlier said again, "Keep an eye out. In the eastern region, there was a riot in the Starry Manor. More than 20 undead monarchs have disappeared near the passage in Area 30, the losses are too great. Temporarily give up on the rules and don't let any more undead enter the Starry Palace." Does anyone know what happened in the Starry Palace? Did King Gong's origin returning knife riot? It's hard to tell. The undead discussed. Soon, one of them said, "Should we report it to the king?" "No need, it's just a small matter. The king is in closed-door cultivation, but report it to Marquis Yu Ming. There are many humans in the east who have revived, let's hand it over to Marquis Lan Shan." The undead discussed for a while and decided to report it. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2739, Chapter 2739, Chapter 583, Opening the Heavenly Cycle Divine Aperture. 2. Chapter 2739, Chapter 583, Opening the Heavenly Cycle Divine Aperture. 2. The tiger duo was extremely powerful. After reviving, they would both have the strength of an eternal 7 Dan. If such a powerful undead overlord died, they would still have to report it. Of course, they would have to wait for a while. If the law of attraction was taken away, they might be able to return very quickly. They would have to wait 3 days before they could read it again. The law of attraction would only allow them to stay in the living world for 3 days. The few dead souls guarding the mirror quickly closed their eyes and stopped looking. On the mirror, there were many black dots, some big and some small. There were also some black and red dots like Suyu. It didn't mean that he had just awakened or that he was half alive and half dead. This kind of thing was very common in the world of dead souls. If it wasn't for Suyu following He Tu and Xingyu, no one would care. In fact, no one cared at this moment. Whether it was the half-dead souls or the newly awakened ones, they were more concerned about the situation on He Tu's side. The Tiger Clan's 2 heroes had been killed, and He Tu's restraints were gone. Who knew if it would cause waves in the vicinity? At the same time, Suyu's calamity divine script twitched slightly. Suyu looked around, but he did not find anything. There were no people in the desolate area, not even a shadow. He too turned his head. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, I feel a sense of danger. The dead soul realm is full of danger." He too didn't think much of it. How could this place not be dangerous? In the sky up ahead was the dead soul heavenly river, which was full of danger. He too wasn't careless either. He looked around and shook his head. "It's nothing. If the sense of danger isn't too strong, then it's normal." He paid a lot of attention to Suyu's sense of danger. If it was anyone else, he would not have bothered to look at it. Even he did not sense it, but Suyu did. However, since it was Suyu who said it, he still checked it out. Suyu nodded and smiled. "With His Excellency here, nothing will happen." As he said that, he made some calculations and said, "Today is 21 days. I'd better rush back in 9 days, or earlier. Make some preparations." "Sir, how long will it take?" He too was also speechless. "You still want to rush back in advance? This kid, is he planning to go back and do something big?" The two of them did not mention the sense of danger anymore. Of course, they had to be careful in the dark. It was not a big mistake to be careful. However, their side was not weak now. Goofy also had the strength of an eternal 7 Dan. With He Tu and Suyu, even though they did not have Star Moon, they still had the strength of an eternal 7 Dan. This was considered an extremely powerful force. They were not afraid of ordinary dangers. Unless there was an eternal 9 Dan or an immortal soul 3rd level cultivator, they could still deal with them. And there were strong and weak eternal 9 Dan cultivators. The Great Qin King, the Minister of the Sky Division, and the Blood Fire Demon King were actually the stronger ones. It was not that there were no weaker ones at the same level as them. If they encountered weaker ones, they could deal with them. As Suyu walked, he asked, in the ancient times, those half-emperors, marquises, and generals, why don't I feel like I've met them? Some are still in the Dead Soul's heavenly river, and some have recovered. They might not be around here. He too said lightly, if you go further east, you'll still meet some old acquaintances. If you're free, you can go and take a look. You were quite a lot of people when you were alive, but your mind isn't clear. Alright, the Dead Soul's realm was too big. Suyu was also speechless. They had been flying in this damn place for a whole day. Judging from this, it was only a small area. The Dead Soul's realm was really big. It felt like even the heavenly battlefield was not as big as this place. In fact, it was indeed not as big as the Dead Soul's realm. After flying for a while, Suyu saw a huge black hole embedded under the Dead Soul's realm. Nearby, there were some weak undead wandering around, but he did not see any powerful ones. He too pointed at the huge black hole and said, "That's it. When I was guiding the fool, a vortex suddenly opened up here. One came over to take a look, but I was teleported over." After saying that, he looked at it in a daze and said with a strange tone, "This guy, he also flew over here. Has he been here before?" Suyu was surprised. Xia Chen had been here before. It couldn't be. "Senior Xia Chen, have you been here before?" Suyu asked and stared blankly at the black hole. After a long while, he said with difficulty, No, this place." Soon, the aura of death filled his eyes again and turned gray. Suyu was helpless. This kind of situation was the most troublesome. He knew a little about everything. The key was that he couldn't explain it. Powerless. He couldn't be bothered to ask anymore. Forget it, I don't need to know anything. One just need to know how the 360 divine apertures are distributed. He didn't hesitate too much. After making a slight judgment, he quickly flew up into the sky. He too, Xingyu, and the others quickly followed. A moment later. After passing through the long black hole, Suyu's eyes lit up. In front of him, it was as bright as the starry sky. In this godforsaken place, he could still see the starry sky. It had to be said that it was a kind of enjoyment. In the void, hundreds of great stars floated in the air. Suyu took a look. It was fine if there was no comparison, but when he compared them, he was ecstatic. Divine Aperture Location Map. That's absolutely right. As expected. MV guess was right. Outside was the Origin Aperture Location Map, and here was the Divine Aperture Location Map. At this moment, these stars were very dim. There were no signs of teleportation. Without teleportation, there was naturally no way to open it, and there was no way to use cultivation techniques. That wasn't important. Suyu panted, a little excited. What was important was that he could open all of his divine apertures. Also, if he opened his divine apertures, he might be able to enter the Mountain Sea realm just like before. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2740, Chapter 2740, Chapter 583, Opening the Heavenly Acupuncture Points. 3. Chapter 2740, Chapter 583, Opening the Heavenly Acupuncture Points. 3. God Acupuncture Points Combined. Last time, the primordial acupuncture points naturally merged into one with the 40 acupuncture points. This time, if it was the same, the 40 acupuncture points of the god acupuncture points combined into one, that would be the 9th layer of the mountain and sea realm. There were still some differences between the path of the civilized master and the path of the warrior. As for the heavenly acupuncture points cultivation method, even if it didn't have one, the impact wouldn't be too great. The impact would come later, in the sun and moon, in invincibility, and not now. I've only sketched out 30 divine runes. It shouldn't be too much of a problem, right? Suyu thought to himself. The splitting technique seemed to have split into mountains and seas. Even the sun and moon were trying to split it. Before the splitting technique was still effective, the divine runes hadn't been completely sketched out, so there wasn't much of a problem. It wouldn't affect the following divine runes battle techniques. Right now, Suyu's focus on sketching divine runes was on sketching out innate divine runes. As for non-innate divine runes, he rarely sketched them out now. The map of the divine aperture. Suyu looked at the sky with joy. He too, on the other hand, looked at it carefully for a while and nodded slightly. L didn't pay too much attention to it before. It is indeed the map of the divine aperture. I didn't open many divine apertures back then. As he spoke, he frowned slightly and said, "Is the map of the divine aperture useful here? Those who came here are all dead people. Their primordial apertures and divine apertures are all illusory. Do you know what the map is for?" Suyu smiled and said, "Maybe it's for the living. Or perhaps, there were living people in the dead soul realm back then." He too couldn't be bothered to guess. He didn't say anything. The map of the divine apertures wasn't of much use to him. He looked at Suyu and said, "Are you sure you can open 360 divine apertures?" That was the key. Suyu took a deep breath and looked at the sky. He said, "I'll try. Now I've opened 290 divine apertures. I'm still short of 70. It's more difficult. I'll try to open 10 divine apertures a day and finish it in 7 days." As he spoke, he took out a large number of treasures, including the huge heavenly river sand. They were all treasures that could strengthen one's willpower, and he too was too lazy to say anything. Soon, he crossed over to a star. As for being teleported to the starry mansion, he was not afraid. However, after a careful inspection, he too shook his head and said, "There's no way to teleport. It seems that there's a lack of energy. When the 1-month period is complete, I don't know if it'll be activated again." If it was not possible, he could only wait for the next 10 years. Suyu did not care about this. What he was most concerned about was the issue of opening the divine aperture. As for the starry mansion, he could go or not. Opening the divine aperture. As long as the divine aperture is fully opened, the Yin aperture will be discovered very quickly. When the Yin aperture is opened, the Yang aperture will be completed. At that time, it will open only if I want to open it. If I want to seal it, I can seal it. I don't have to absorb my energy all the time. Even so, when he absorbed and opened it, Suyu still needed to recharge his treasure. Star Moon, it still seemed to be a little lacking. Otherwise, if he were to completely rely on his energy output, his long-lasting battle prowess would be too weak. Suyu thought in his heart and didn't say anything else. He quickly sat down cross-legged, compared it to the star map, and quickly began to open his divine aperture. Open the divine aperture. At this moment, in his sea of will, 290 divine apertures had been opened. Among them, some of the divine apertures were very powerful. Suyu took a look and frowned slightly. It might not be able to smoothly close the aperture. The main reason was that back then, in order to strengthen the aperture, 360 divine apertures were different in strength, and he had swallowed a lot of sun-moon mysterious yellow liquid. Unless, he had some more, and he balanced all the divine apertures. There's no rush. At this moment, compared to his primordial aperture, his divine acupoints were still too weak. Suyu did not care whether he advanced or not. He just needed to open his Yin aperture. Don't mess around. Suyu's willpower fluctuated and threw the little hairy ball away. Don't block me from opening my aperture. Go play somewhere else. In the sea of will, the little hairy ball swayed its body and did not care. Very soon, it drilled into the floating civilization will at the side, drilled into the book seal, and lay on the two words civilization. Its small body lay on the two divine runes. It did not matter. Even if it did not stay in the sea of consciousness, it could still enter the civilization's consciousness. These two divine inscriptions were also fragrant. As for Suyu, when he saw that the little hairy ball was lying on the civilization's consciousness, he was slightly startled, and his eyes flickered. That's right. In the Golden Atlas, the little hairy ball had been saying that it was fragrant. According to his deduction, if this thing was a weapon of a time master, the little hairy ball did not really care about weapons. In that case, there might really be divine runes in this book. Suyu's gaze was strange. Perhaps. Just like him, there were divine runes fused into it. Divine runes. Suyu exhaled. He did not really use this book anymore. Of course, it was not completely useless. For example, if he managed to obtain the half-emperor blood essence, he could still give it a try. One day, when he had the chance to fuse this thing into his civilization. As soon as Suyu had this thought, the golden atlas in his sea of consciousness trembled slightly. Suyu sensed it and narrowed his eyes. Interesting. Perhaps it really was an extremely powerful divine weapon. It had some intelligence and could sense some of his thoughts. After all, even the cauldron could sense it. Forget it. Suyu quickly began to absorb willpower. 290 God apertures burst out to open the God apertures. Previously, after advancing to the 9 transformations of Lingyun, Suyu had absorbed quite a lot of the power of law, and there were still some remnants. Little hairy ball was also full, so he did not eat much. At this moment it was the most suitable for opening the God apertures. Unfortunately, he did not know the location of the God apertures before. Otherwise, Suyu would definitely absorb more of the power of law, even if he did not enter the 9 transformations of Lingyun. The later stages of the God apertures were harder to open, but they could not withstand the power of law. Boom! Above the Sea of Will, another star has been opened, 291 God's aperture. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2741, Chapter 2741, Chapter 583, Opening the Heavenly Aperture. 4. Chapter 2741, Chapter 583, Opening the Heavenly Aperture. 4. The speed was extremely fast. Suyu closed his eyes and continued opening the heavenly aperture. 292,293. One after another, the heavenly apertures were opened by him. Some of the treasures around him were also quickly crushed by him. Regardless of whether they were suitable for opening the heavenly aperture or not, Suyu didn't care about wasting treasures. Some treasures were more suitable for opening the heavenly aperture. They weren't of much help to the opening of the heavenly aperture and could only provide a small amount of willpower. Suyu didn't care too much about it. If he crushed all of them, he could at least provide a little bit of it. In addition to the purification of the heavenly river sand, it was still very pure. 300. 310. Suyu was still opening his divine aperture, and time passed bit by bit. He too and the others all had calm expressions as they waited silently. To the undead, this bit of time was too short. They didn't need to care at all. He too was a little bored from waiting. He glanced at the stars and moons, he transmitted his voice, "Don't you want to take the opportunity to kill him?" The stronger Su Yu is, the more impossible it is for you to convert him. And even if he has opened his complete heavenly aperture, he wouldn't normally absorb your aura of death. But once the war breaks out, he will need to borrow the power of his heavenly aperture. Sooner or later, he will suck you dry. Xing Yu glanced at him coldly. He too smiled. He transmitted his voice. You're not thinking of waiting for him to resurrect you, are you? I'll be honest with you. The difficulty is too great. Back then, there was also a monarch who converted me. I wanted to resurrect him later. Sorry, I blew up. Halfway through the conversion, he died. I killed him. Actually, I didn't want to. I wanted to resurrect him and really walk out of the dead soul realm to help me. In the end, he still died. Su Yu doesn't know anything about this now. If he wanted to convert, the first person would be you. The probability of you being blown up by his conversion is very high. Xing Yue looked at him again. After a long time, she spat out 2 words, idiot. He too was stunned and a little angry. You're scolding me? Xing Yue ignored him. So what if I'm scolding you? You still dare to hit me? I'm not afraid of you either. Xing Yue couldn't be bothered with him. As she absorbed the mark of the undead, she thought and thought, it felt like a long, long time ago. She was enjoying this feeling and silently experiencing this feeling. What did he too know? The undead were already dead. What was wrong with dying again? Su Yu was alive. At least, she felt some emotions that she had never felt before. Anger, thinking, excitement, surprise. Su Yu's existence was reminding her that she was no longer an undead that only had the intent to kill. She had emotions. This seemed to have brought her back to the time when she was alive. In He Tu's eyes, there was only life and death and only benefits. As for Xing Yu, she was thinking more about feelings. Different feelings. He too would not understand. These people who only wanted to compete for hegemony would not understand these things. Gradually, more memories appeared in her mind. Xing Yu quietly absorbed, comprehended, and experienced it for a long time. She said, once the heavenly aperture is fully opened, he will no longer be restricted by the heavenly aperture. He can open it whenever he wants. When he really completes the unity aperture, the power of the heavenly aperture is also his own power. He no longer needs to absorb external forces like he does now. He too was stunned for a moment and transmitted his voice. You know about the situation of the heavenly aperture? Opening the heavenly aperture was really not something that an ordinary person could do. It required the completion of both the heavenly aperture and the origin aperture. There were probably not many such figures even in the ancient times, right? Xing Yu said coldly, why don't you know? It's not like no one has opened the heavenly aperture in the ancient times. Who exactly are you? He too's interest was piqued. You know the martial king and the heavenly aperture. I suddenly realized that your identity might not have been ordinary when you were alive. Xing Yu ignored him. She knew a lot. But there were some things that she could not be bothered to talk about. He too said again, then let me ask you, do you know where those people who are still alive are? He gritted his teeth. Also, is there any communication between the realm of dead souls and the realm of living souls? That year, when I opened the channel of dead souls, some dead souls suddenly came out. I found out that they were not from this area. Where did they come from? Not only many, but they are also very strong. Am I being plotted against? He had already established a great advantage in the later stage of the first tide change, but in the end, he was destroyed by the dead souls. Because he had seriously violated the rules, Old Turtle had no choice but to represent the rules and destroy him. In fact, he didn't really hate Old Turtle. He had already made a deal with him. However, at that time, he had violated the rules too seriously. If this continued, he wouldn't be the only one who would be in trouble. The guards of the 36 cities would also be in trouble. This was because they were at a disadvantage. Once the aura of death completely spread, the guards of the 36 cities might all die. Therefore, Old Turtle killed him. The first tide change gradually came to an end with his death. The human race was defeated. He too had been observing for many years after his death. Unfortunately, he couldn't get out. The Old Turtle had suppressed him for countless years. After all, what he observed was only what he saw, not what he experienced. He wasn't too sure. Did Xingyue know anything? Xingyu was silent. Su Yu is the next me. He too said calmly, sooner or later, he will become me. He is too similar to me. He has also become the master of the ancient city. Similarly, he is making use of the strength of the dead spirit realm. He even wants to summon the dead spirits to fight for him. If he does not grasp the situation, the moment he opens the dead spirit passage in the living spirit realm, a large number of dead spirit lords will rush out. If he is not controlled, Old Turtle will probably kill him. Compared to heaven destroying them, Su Yu is clearly inferior. City Lord 36 was punished for violating the rules. Killing Su Yu and protecting the rules allowed him to go unpunished. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2742, Chapter 2742, Chapter 583, Opening the Divine Aperture of the Universe. 5. Chapter 2742, Chapter 583, Opening the Divine Aperture of the Universe. 5. Old Turtle was definitely biased in his choice. Xingyu frowned slightly. Don't know. I'm already dead, how would I know all this? But, the realm of the dead souls might not be an ownerless place. 3. He too narrowed his eyes. Did you know about the situation of the realm of the dead souls when you were alive? Don't know, but I have a vague idea. Xingyue hesitated for a moment and said through voice transmission, there should be an owner in the realm of the dead souls. Human Emperor might have conferred the title of King of the Dead Souls back then. I don't remember the specific situation, and I don't know either. She looked at He Tuesday, you've been wandering outside all these years. Didn't you find anything? Found some insignificant things. He too pondered for a moment before continuing, in the river of souls, when some fellows awaken, a wisp of aura of death will disappear. It's possible that someone has collected their aura. It's recorded in the records. There might be someone gathering information on all the experts in this damned place. Secondly, if I head east, I'll reach the end. I'll be cut off by the river of souls. I tried to cross it once, but in the end, I failed. Huge waves surged into the sky, and they nearly killed me. I suspect that the other side is still the realm of the dead. Thirdly, putting aside the ancient times, it has been 100,000 years since the first tide. I realize that the number of experts attracted by the river of the dead souls is far from what I had imagined. Many of them have disappeared. Fourthly, in the 10th tide, other than the fact that I had consumed the fruit of life and death when I was alive, Old Turtle showed mercy to me. He did not destroy my physical body and allowed me to transform into a dead soul. With some of my memories, I hid under Hongmeng Ancient City. I realized that the main characters of the other tides are not here. He too hadn't been revived in the river of souls. He had transformed into a dead spirit with his physical body. With some memories, he had entered the dead spirit realm below Hongmeng Ancient City and occupied it, becoming the master of Hongmeng Kingdom. So, I've deduced that those guys might not be in this area, especially the one in the 9th tide. He's an expert who's really close to the ancient king realm. He's dead. Logically speaking, the river of souls must have caused a huge commotion, but I didn't sense it. At the 9th tide, a peerless overlord of the human race appeared. He was incomparably powerful, and in the end, he was killed. However, he too didn't see him here. He didn't discover him, and there was no sign of him reviving either. The change of tide had passed, and it had been almost 10,000 years. Now, even Xia Chen might have revived, but that person hadn't. Although the stronger one was, the harder it was to revive, but there was still some movement, right? He too didn't see many Dao fusing experts here, and there were very few of them. Xing Yu was a little dazed. After a long while, she said, "I'm not sure. According to what you said, the area we're in is just a corner of the dead soul's realm, right?" He too nodded. "The few fellows who tricked me back then might not be from this area." At this point, he too continued, "There's one more thing. During the last tidal change, the previous demon emperor barged into the dead soul's realm and died after being heavily injured. To put it bluntly, how many people in this place can seriously injure him to the point that he can't recover and directly die? It said that he died after barging into the dead soul's realm and was heavily injured by the dead souls in the dead soul's realm. Then let me ask you, have you been to the dead soul's realm before? Will those powerful existences attack you? Very little." Star Moon looked at him and he too said faintly, "So, there might be some problems with the death of the demon emperor. He might not have been seriously injured by the dead soul sovereign in our area, but he was an outsider." Star Moon did not say anything. She was not too concerned about these things. He too said, "Don't think that it has nothing to do with you. I found that the flame demon might be an opportunity. The previous demon emperor might have barged in to resurrect someone, but he might not have found it in the end, so he conveniently placed a chess piece there. It was the flame demon. The demon race had always wanted to resurrect him and bring him back. How would the demon race resurrect him? If Su Yu wants to resurrect the dead souls, I'm afraid he'll have to make a trip to the demon race." Xing Yu's eyes flickered. Perhaps. The flame demon's strength was not too strong, probably around the level of a level 6 eternal demon. However, it should not have only been this strong when it was alive. If it was resurrected, it might be able to recover its strength. That would indeed be of great help to the demon race. However, this might just be a primer. The demon race might not only want the flame demon, they might even want to resurrect other demon race. For example, the previous demon emperor. That was a powerful master. There were many experts in the 9th tidal change. The Blood Fire Demon King could be considered one of the outstanding ones. However, he wasn't the main character, just a minor supporting character. Even he had the strength of level 9 Eternal Realm. One could imagine how many experts had appeared in the 9th tidal change. The two of them were mainly talking about he too. And time slowly passed. There were fewer and fewer treasures around Su Yu. In the end, Su Yu even started to shatter the dragon blood fruit. Not only the dragon blood fruit, even the water condensation bead and emperor saliva. Su Yu was absorbing them. He used the heavenly river sand to purify some willpower. Clearly, he lacked willpower. He needed a large amount of it. Even if these things could only provide a little bit, he was not stingy in using them to replenish his willpower. If outsiders saw this, they would probably cry in heartache. However, Su Yu understood one thing. If you were strong, the things would belong to you. If you were not strong, if you died, then no matter how many treasures you had, they would all belong to someone else. In the Sea of Will, 350 acupuncture points were lit up. There were still 10 missing. However, Su Yu had almost used up all the treasures that could replenish his willpower. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2743, Chapter 2743, Chapter 583, Opening the Divine Aperture of the Universe. 6. Chapter 2743, Chapter 583, Opening the Divine Aperture of the Universe. 6. Su Yu was caught in a dilemma. At the next moment, he suddenly used his willpower to grab the little furball who was licking the divine runes. The little furball had an innocent and confused look on his face. What was he doing? Was he trying to kill the ball? Most of me have already come out. He's so powerful, yet you still want to kill the ball. Give me some willpower and the power of rules. Don't pretend. Suyu said unhappily, with your small physique, I know how much you can eat. Every time, you eat a little more and store it as snacks. Do you think I don't know? Cut the crap. First, give me some to open my mind. I'll open my mind. When I'm strong enough, I'll kill Tiangu and give it to you. If you can't kill De and the others, I can kill them. Hurry up. 1. I'll just spit out a little bit. The little hairy ball pitifully spat out a little bit of the power of rules. Suyu quickly absorbed it. With a rumble, aperture 351 was opened. Suyu looked at it silently. The little hairy ball was very sad. It spat out another little bit. This is all of. Boom. Aperture 352 was opened. There really isn't any more. The little hairy ball was about to cry. After spitting out another little bit, Suyu continued to absorb and open his aperture. Aperture 353 was opened. Little by little, the little furball's fortune was emptied out. When Suyu opened his 358 apertures, the little furball suddenly burst into tears. It's really gone. There's nothing left. Really, it's so fragrant. I'm completely gone. It cried. The fragrance had emptied it out. It was not human. It had gone from a wealthy little furball to a penniless little furball. Suyu was actually shocked. This fellow had hidden so many things, and it had helped him open 8 divine apertures. No wonder this fellow was not very interested in treasures recently. So, there was a huge pile of them hidden. Was it really emptied out? Seeing it cry so sadly, Suyu could not be bothered to say anything more. Very quickly, a few divine runes wrapped around it. Go lick it yourself, why are you crying? Wah wah. The little hairy ball cried miserably. It lay pitifully on the divine runes and licked them. It had nothing left to live for. It was so sad. If it didn't beat Tiangu to death to give it to him to eat, it wouldn't agree. As for Suyu, he had a headache. He was only missing 2 divine apertures. He was only missing 2 divine apertures. What else could provide willpower? He flipped through all of his storage. Soon, he saw some treasures. He gritted his teeth and used them. Those were the manuals of the unrivaled experts from before. Suyu had burned many of them last time, and now, there were still a few more. In addition, there was the Silkworm King's, Time, and Xia Longwu's, Heaven-Cleaving Blade. These were the writings of the will of the experts. Now, all of them were burned. Opening 2 god apertures was enough. As these treasures burned, soon, 1 god aperture was opened. After a while, Suyu had almost used up all his savings. The last god's aperture was shining brightly. It was about to be opened. Suyu was overjoyed. Damn it, he had used up everything. He had finally succeeded. The 360th god's aperture was about to be opened. He just didn't know if the Dead Soul Realm would be covered by the rules. If a human emperor appeared, it would mean that the human emperor would truly unify the heavens, including the Dead Soul Realm. This was a terrifying rule. Life was under my control, and death was also under my control. At this moment, golden clouds began to slowly appear in the black passage. He too and Xing Yu were stunned. Heaven and Earth's reward. It was almost impossible to see it in the Dead Soul's realm. Suyu was going to succeed. At the same time. In the hall from before, the dead souls opened their eyes again and looked over. At this moment, The light spots on the mirror were fluctuating. One of the dead souls asked curiously, "The fluctuation of the power of law is too strong. What's going on? Are the laws guiding it? Or are the dead souls reviving? Why don't we send someone to take a look? If we go, it'll take too long. We still have to send someone to take a look. He too is over there. That fellow entered the dead soul's realm directly back then and wasn't under our control. We still have to investigate his movements. It won't be easy for us to investigate. The Spirit Guardian General has been interfering with our plans. That old geezer." The death spirits felt a little helpless at the mention of the Spirit Guardian General. Even though he was just a mere figurehead, his true strength could be said to be that of the Spirit Guardian Marquis. Even in ancient times, a conferred Marquis was still an overlord of a region. He too was under his protection. That's right, protection. He too was in his territory. Any undead monarch would have to consider whether they could deal with that old turtle. That was an existence that could be conferred a Marquis in the ancient times. Originally, since the ancient times were indestructible and the old turtle had ended his mission, King Gong had already requested an imperial decree to confer him a title. Now that King Gong's descendant, he too, was in his territory, who would dare to rashly find trouble? A group of undead sighed. They had no choice. They still had to investigate. That old turtle should just avoid him a little. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2744, Chapter 2744, Chapter 584 returns. L. Chapter 2744, Chapter 584 returns. L. Clouds appeared in the sky. One after another. Zhou Tianxing, the human emperor, sends his blessings. Su Yu opened his eyes and took a look. He was speechless. This was a perfunctory design by the human emperor's subordinates, right? The last time when he opened the 360 yuan aperture, the blessing given to Su Yu was, "Zhou Tian cast body, the human emperor sends his blessings." So, he changed 2 words. On the other side, he too and Xing Yu were a little stunned. Looking at the starry sky, he too muttered, "Can there be a heavenly blessing in the dead soul realm?" This was the first time he had seen it. Su Yu was used to it. It was not the first time he had given a blessing. This awakening was related to willpower. This blessing was either willpower, divine runes, or the power of rules. The power of rules could only be absorbed by heaven's punishment and heaven's blessing. Under normal circumstances, it could only absorb the things that were sent. Soon, the clouds fell toward Su Yu. The 360 divine apertures shone with a bright light. It was just that there were some differences in size. However, this problem was quickly solved. When the first cloud fell, Su Yu was stunned. This power was somewhat similar to the sun-moon mysterious yellow liquid, but it seemed to be more useful than the sun-moon mysterious yellow liquid. Su Yu's eyes flickered. Now, he had 2 choices. The first was to strengthen the divine script, and the second was to strengthen the acupuncture points. Enter the mountain and sea realm, merge the mountain and sea realm, and promote the divine script. However, once he failed to complete the aperture synthesis, it would be difficult for the divine script to advance. After hesitating for a moment, Su Yu quickly chose to strengthen the acupuncture points. The divine script was powerful. After completing the natural aperture synthesis, he would instantly step into the 9th level of the mountain and sea realm and promote the divine script. This might be more suitable for him. In his mind, little Hairy Ball really wanted to eat. Su Yu quickly shouted. "You're not allowed to eat this time. I don't even have enough for myself. Next time, I said that I'll let you eat after I kill Tiangu." "You're lying, you can't kill Tiangu." Little Hairy Ball felt wronged. "You lied to me, I know. This was just a dream. Xiangxiang was very powerful now, but if he wanted to kill Qinggu, he would have to wait. Who knew how long it would take? The planet's stock was all gone. Can't I just eat a little? Don't worry, if I can't kill Tianhua, I'll kill some immortals first. All fragrant, what's the rush? Su Yu comforted him. At this juncture, don't cause trouble for me. I might even have heaven and earth rewards for advancing to the mountain and sea realm. There were rewards for opening God apertures, and there might even be rewards for advancing. In this day and age, plucking the power of laws was the correct path. Very quickly, Su Yu absorbed the power of the clouds and strengthened the God apertures one by one. The God apertures began to grow stronger. The 360 God apertures began to circulate naturally at this moment. However, this kind of natural circulation was not the type of cultivation technique. From the looks of it, there was still a lack of cultivation techniques. Su Yu did not care too much about it. If there was no cultivation technique, then so be it. Let's advance first. The God apertures began to devour the power of the clouds one by one. After watching for a while, the stars and the moon disappeared. Not long after, a rumbling sound came from outside. Some dead souls had rushed over. It was probably the wandering dead souls nearby. He too also watched for a while and said with a smile, "This talent is amazing." 7 days. Just as Su Yu said, he only spent 7 days to open the divine apertures in the universe. It was inhuman. Was there still a limit and bottleneck for Su Yu? He too fell into deep thought. Su Yu's aptitude was somewhat heaven-defying. Was this aptitude because of his bloodline or something else? Su Yu didn't have time to think about this. At this moment, he rapidly devoured. One by one, the apertures emitted a resplendent radiance. The entire sea of consciousness was trembling, expanding, and becoming larger. Above the ocean, a large hammer appeared. It was the God-expanding hammer. Beside the God-expanding hammer, there were 99 divine inscriptions outlining the divine inscriptions combat techniques. At this moment, 28 divine inscriptions were floating above and surrounding it. Among them, the blood character divine inscriptions had advanced to the sun and moon realm, while the other divine inscriptions were faintly showing signs of advancing. Gradually, the divine apertures began to emit a similar radiance. As for the power of the clouds and the power of the rewards, they had been mostly absorbed by Su Yu. Boom! At this moment, in the sky above the Sea of Will, the stars changed. 360 stars rapidly circled around, and 40 stars began to gather. This was the sign of advancing to the mountain and sea realm. The mountain and sea realm of a civilized master. Su Yu's level of a civilized master had always been slightly faster than his physical body, but his physical body was stronger. In terms of a civilized master, his support was very powerful, but in terms of strength. Su Yu made a judgment. Even if he had opened 360 God's apertures, he was now at the 9th level of Ling Yun. It would be pretty good if he could kill sun and moon. Compared to his physical body, the difference was too great. Yes, Su Yu felt that he still had a chance to kill sun and moon with Ling Yun's civilized master's willpower. The path of a civilized master was similar to Madua's previous strength. Boom! The entire sea of consciousness shook once again. This time, 40 God's apertures were merging. Su Yu felt a little sorry for Wu Lan for not deriving the God's apertures merging technique. He had promised Wu Lan that he would derive the God's apertures merging technique and name it after her. Unfortunately, his strength didn't allow it. Su Yu sighed and felt helpless. There was nothing I could do. I had opened 360 God apertures, so he naturally closed his apertures. I was really helpless about this. Since he had naturally closed his apertures, what was the point of deducing? Why not wait until I had obtained the God aperture synthesis technique and could use it when I had 9 apertures into one? Then, how about changing the name? Su Yu thought to himself, the God-expanding hammer had started to be strengthened by him. Recently, he had used too much of his physical body, and he was almost losing the God-expanding hammer. This thing, once I reached the 9th layer of the mountain and sea realm, I compressed it down and opened up 360 God apertures. If I hammer it down, the 4th and 5th layers of the sun and moon would feel dizzy. You're tuning into the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2745, Chapter 2745, Chapter 584 is back. 2. Chapter 2745, Chapter 584 is back. 2. If he were to be even more powerful, he would be able to crush his sea of consciousness even if he were to reach the 6th level of the sun-moon realm with a single hammer strike. The God-expanding hammer was a truly powerful divine skill. Rumble. His sea of consciousness continued to expand, close his apertures, advance, and expand. The 40 apertures quickly began to close up. 10, 20, 30. When the 40th aperture fused with the other apertures and formed one aperture, a huge boom could be heard as the sea of will once again expanded. At this moment, clouds once again appeared between heaven and earth. The reward for advancing to the mountain and sea realm. Previously, the reward for opening the divine aperture was actually faster than opening the yuan aperture. The reward for opening the yuan aperture was a reward that came after the body was cast. This time, however, it was different. It was given twice. However, this time, there were no more blessings. Only some willpower emerged from the clouds. As for Su Yu, this time, he didn't do anything else but upgrade the divine runes. Upgrade the divine runes. The blood divine runes had upgraded to the sun and moon, but Su Yu still had a few divine runes that needed to be upgraded. Calm, tribulation, Een, and change. Su Yu needed them to advance to tier 5. In addition, the newly comprehended wherein the previously comprehended. Slow also needed to be upgraded. The word civilization had stepped into the sun and moon level. This didn't need to be upgraded now. When his civilization's will was upgraded, these two characters would naturally be upgraded. And the willpower reward for entering the mountain and sea realm wasn't too much. Su Yu felt that it might not be enough for what he needed. Willpower. PM2 lacking. When I go back, I have to borrow the Sea of Consciousness Arcane Realm. He had to borrow it. Su Yu had a lot of sand in the river of heaven, but the most important thing was that he needed the cooperation of the Sea of Consciousness Arcane Realm. He had to improve his divine prose. Otherwise, he would count on the rewards of heaven and earth every time. Now that he didn't even get a reward for killing an invincible opponent, how many more times could he count on? Could he count on killing a half-emperor next time? Maybe. Su Yu quickly absorbed that willpower. The little hairy ball drooled as it watched. It wanted it too, but unfortunately, it was so short of fragrance that it didn't want to eat it anymore. The little hairy ball had advanced to the mountain and sea realm for quite some time. After it advanced, it had also eaten quite a lot of good food. Unfortunately, it seemed to be still some distance away from the sun and moon. Su Yu did not know how it advanced either. In any case, he did not feel that the little hairy ball had any signs of advancing to the sun and moon realm. If this little fellow did not advance, it would not be of much help to Su Yu. In the past, with the little hairy ball around, when dealing with experts, the hairy ball would be able to swallow the opponent's divine text or sea of will with a splash. It was still very powerful. Now, little hairy ball was able to devour a sea of sun and moon's will. The difficulty wasn't small, but Su Yu could kill it with a single slap. As he thought to himself, a divine text began to erupt with the radiance of the sun and moon. Tribulation. That's right, Su Yu's first choice was to upgrade this divine text, this innate divine text. This was also an important divine text that he sought benefits and avoided harm. The tribulation, divine text trembled violently. Very quickly, after it erupted with a dazzling radiance, it instantly dimmed and went into hibernation. There was no tribulation, and the tribulation, divine text had always been very low-key. The second piece of God, Suyu in the struggle, in the end to promote which? Quiet. This God text, is also very useful, rob home, ambush others the best means, weaken the enemy perception, shield the enemy probe, are very useful, but after all, this is not born God text. Suyu was thinking, suddenly, a God text, extremely sinister, as if alive, suddenly rushed into the clouds, quickly absorbing power, in the blink of an eye, that black God text, silently advanced. Yes, damn it. Even when it advanced to the sun and moon realm, it was still silent. There was no movement at all. Other than seeing it steal food, there was nothing left. It disappeared very quickly. The corner of Suyu's mouth twitched. If King, have nothing to say. This divine text even learned to steal food. The divine text advanced just like that. Suyu was speechless. This divine text was also very important. It blocked detection, concealed aura, and combined with the change and silence divine text, it could allow Suyu to hide better and disguise better. The key was that I didn't consider letting you advance. You actually advanced on your own. Suyu was very weak. He looked at his remaining willpower and realized that it wasn't enough. It was probably not enough for one divine text to advance to sun and moon. Forget it, let's upgrade the two newly born divine texts. One was Pierce, and the other was Saint. The ability to shuttle was still very important. As for Saint, this was also very important. To increase the trust of others, upgrading these two divine inscriptions to tier 4 was not bad either. Very quickly, the remaining willpower was used up by Suyu. The two new divine inscriptions were being upgraded. When the willpower was used up, these two divine inscriptions had also advanced to tier 4. At this point, Suyu had 5 sun-moon divine inscriptions, 1, Ming, blood, tribulation, and Yin, and 25 mountain and sea divine inscriptions. This kind of configuration was comparable to some invincible ones. Many invincible ones would be like this if they cultivated divine runes at the same time. After all, the human race didn't have invincible divine runes. And the convergence was still going on. Suyu silently comprehended and started to use the expanding spirit technique to stabilize his sea of consciousness. His sea of consciousness was stable, and during a big battle, it wouldn't be pierced through by others. This was something Suyu liked to do. How he killed others, he had to be careful of how others killed him. The expanding spirit hammer hammered crazily. In the entire sea of consciousness, he could only see this big hammer hammering crazily, stabilizing his sea of consciousness, stabilizing the divine script, and stabilizing his willpower. The still divine script is not weak, be careful. If I get close to the great Zhou King, the great Zhou King might be able to sense my existence. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2746, Chapter 2746, Chapter 584 is back. 3. Chapter 2746, Chapter 584 is back. 3. Right now, Suyu didn't really read the text of will, which was also related to this point. The invincible text of will, read a little less. He actually outlined a few invincible divine texts. He didn't use much of the others, but the great Zhou King's quiet, divine text was indeed frequently used. In this way, it was very easy for the great Zhou King to sense it. Suyu had even considered whether or not he should give up, but in the end, he still couldn't bear to give up. Because it was really useful. Without this divine rune, he killed people like a light bulb. He killed his way out and told everyone that he was going to kill them, but with this divine rune, it was like a light bulb being extinguished. It would be difficult for everyone to see him. I'll use it for now. Suyu thought silently, while his sea of consciousness was still undergoing a transformation. The second 40 divine aperture began to close. This was to allow him to step into the 9th level of the mountain sea realm. 1:11 Take it slow. There's no rush. Suyu thought to himself. After reaching the 9th level, he would still be stuck there. It wouldn't be too obvious for his strength to increase. Although he seemed to have advanced very quickly, in reality, in the blink of an eye, a day had passed. He opened his eyes, closed them, and a day had passed. This was the 28th day that the Xingyu residence had opened. If the teleportation channel was still usable, it would start the day after tomorrow to transport the living away. L can't waste any more time. Suyu no longer cared about the matter of the aperture synthesis. He quickly opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he too, dazedly, and Xingyue were all looking at him. Seeing that Suyu had opened his eyes, he too sighed and said, "Have you entered the mountains and seas? The path of a civilized master is hard to walk, but your physical body is. You have walked quite far. With your talent, if it were in the ancient times, you might have been a king of men." Suyu smiled and said, "If it were now, that would be true." He too smiled and said, "That is hard to say." After saying that, he asked, "Have you opened your yin aperture?" "Not yet." Suyu smiled and said, "But I have already sensed the position. Opening it is not difficult. My divine aperture has already opened." With that said, Suyu's 360 divine apertures lit up. The concept of the primordial spirit aperture that he had proposed a long time ago was about to be completed today. The primordial spirit aperture and the divine aperture both had a final junction point. Yin and yang merged together. In ancient times, it was called the divine aperture, and Suyu preferred to call it the primordial spirit aperture. Boom! In the Sea of Will, a huge aperture that was as big as a bright moon was instantly opened by Suyu. Countless soft yin energy spread out. It was not the aura of death, but a soft yin energy. This energy was the exact opposite of the violent energy that spread out from the yang aperture. This was probably a turning point for the two to fuse together. And the divine aperture and the primordial aperture were originally not connected. However, when this acupoint was opened, in an instant, Suyu's Sea of Will seemed to be connected to a passage. In the next moment, a huge sun appeared on the opposite side of the bright moon. Yin and yang apertures. At this moment, the two apertures did not need Suyu to do anything. They began to fuse automatically. Boom! Suyu only felt his vision blur. In the next moment, he floated in the air and saw his body. He saw many things. He saw another aperture appear at the spot between his brows. Primordial spirit acupuncture point. This acupuncture point was like the sun and moon shining brightly. It stopped at the spot between his brows. A moment later, it was imprinted on the spot between his brows. At the same time, a faint mark appeared on Suyu's forehead. It was not the flame mark of the demon race. Instead, it was a small crystal-like gate that was incomparably bright. Heaven's Gate. The Heaven's Gate that was like the white jade gate. When the Heaven's Gate opened, all the worlds worshipped it. He too was slightly stunned. Beside him, Xingyu was also stunned as she muttered, "The Heaven's Gate has opened." Since ancient times, how many people could open the Heaven's Gate? At this moment, Suyu's entire body was emitting a faint holy light. Suddenly, a book appeared in front of him. On his forehead, the Heaven's Gate mark appeared, and the holy light was brilliant. He too, greetings. He too wanted to pay his respects. As for Xingyue, she bowed slightly as well. She seemed to have seen an ancient existence, looking somewhat familiar. He too instantly broke away from this state. A look of disbelief appeared in his eyes. He almost thought that an ancient king had descended. As for Xingyue, her entire body trembled as she looked at Su Yu and muttered, "You. Shi Guangshi. I seem to have seen Shi Guangshi before. This was a Shi Guangshi." Su Yu frowned slightly, but his frown soon disappeared. He chuckled softly. "Sir, I'm Su Yu, not a Shi Guangshi." At this moment, Su Yu, who had been staring blankly at the side, suddenly clutched his head in pain. He looked at Su Yu with a clear gaze and a deathly stillness in his eyes as he gritted his teeth. With great difficulty, he said, "Shi Guangshi. Shi Guangshi. King 1. King 1, you're King 1, I didn't betray King 1. I didn't. I just passed down the many divine inscriptions, passed down, I didn't rob the tomb. No." Su Yu was stunned. He looked at him with a holy light on his face and said with a gentle smile, "Xia Chen, don't be nervous. You are the tomb keeper of my tomb, right?" "Yes, yes. King 1, my Xia family, has been guarding King Wen's tomb for generations. I didn't rob the tomb," the tombstone trembled. "I want to come out." Su Yu was stunned again, but he still said gently, "Does Xia Wuxian know?" "No god. No god is not a tomb keeper, he is not a civilized master. I am this generation's tomb keeper." Su Yu let out a sigh of relief and was stunned. His head trembled and in the next moment, he suddenly cried out in pain. He was once again stunned. Su Yu was speechless. However, at least he knew something. The tomb keeper. As expected, Xia Chen was the tomb keeper of King Wen's tomb. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2747, Chapter 2747, Chapter 584, Return. 4. Chapter 2747, Chapter 584, Return. 4. He had a rather high status. This was a level 4 authority, comparable to the status of a conferred marquis. He seemed to have brought one tombstone out of King Wen's tomb and passed down many divine inscriptions. In the end, he might have encountered some trouble and mishap. Xia Chen might have been very strong from the start and had been pretending all along. For some reason, he did not know why. Was it related to one tombstone? Su Yu guessed in his heart that perhaps he had taken one tombstone with him and that was why he had met with misfortune. As expected, it was an ominous object. Xia Chen might have been very strong when he was alive. Since he was already dead, what was hidden in one tombstone? Su Yu thought to himself, Xia Chen had mistaken him for King Wen. Had he met King Wen before? It couldn't be. Perhaps, he just felt that they were similar. King Wen. Su Yu muttered. Beside him, Xingyue was also looking at Su Yu in a daze. After a long while, she said, You are King Wen. Or a time master. Su Yu smiled. I am me. How could it be someone else? After saying that, he smiled again. Could it be that there was a saying about reincarnation in ancient times? Xingyue was silent. He too was also looking at Su Yu at that moment. After a long while, he exhaled and said, There is no such thing as reincarnation. There is only possession, just like how the demon emperor was. However, just now, after opening the heaven's gate, you are indeed different. Su Yu smiled and said, How is it different? My aura of death is overflowing now, and I look like a dead person. How can I still be handsome? He was speechless. He too looked at him and said in a deep voice, You opened the heavens gate. No. Since ancient times, there haven't been many experts who opened the heaven's gate. At least, from the first title change until now, I've never heard of a second person who opened the Heaven's Gate. The Heaven's Gate is almost impossible to open. Suyu smiled and did not say anything. At this moment, he was also silently sensing. There was no need to seal the yang aperture. At this moment, the two apertures fused as one, giving Suyu a feeling that the gate had been closed. It could be opened as he wished, closed as he wished. As for the 720 apertures, there were two types of energy. One was essence energy, and the other was willpower. They were currently converging in the Heaven's Gate. Suyu suddenly realized that once the Yuanshan aperture was opened, it might really be able to communicate with each other. For example, if one's willpower was insufficient, one might be able to convert Yuan Qi into willpower through the Heaven's Gate. Indeed, the human body was still connected. Be it the sea of will or the body, they were all part of the human body. How could they not be connected? It was just that they had been isolated previously. Suyu muttered, "I'll understand a little. When my 720 apertures formed the great heavenly cycle, the Heaven's Gate's power would be my own power. I would no longer need to absorb external powers. And now, it is not connected yet. I still need to absorb external powers." These words were in line with what Xingyue had said previously. As for Suyu, he had some feelings because he had already activated it. He looked at Xingyue and smiled. "Master Xingyue, this means that after my great heavenly cycle is activated, Master will no longer need to provide me with the aura of death. At that time, he would be able to transform his own power and open the Heaven's Gate." At this moment, Suyu felt that he was even stronger. After Ling Yun's 9 transformations, his physical strength had reached 66 million apertures. The Tao of Divine Inscriptions didn't increase his physical strength much, but it was dispensable. However, once the Heaven's Gate was opened, it was much more stable. Suyu sensed that after opening his primordial spirit aperture, his strength would increase by at least 50%, a very stable increase. It was close to 100 million. Compared to before, there was not much of a difference. However, now that Suyu could seal his yang aperture, he did not need to absorb external forces. Under normal circumstances, he could also unleash the strength of 66 million apertures. This was the difference. And before that, he still had to satisfy the absorption of his yang aperture. Otherwise, he would need the support of the stars and moons. At this moment, he would only need it when he used it. Xingyue glanced at him and did not say anything. Suyu was no longer absorbing her aura of death. Of course, he would still open his yang aperture to absorb it during the battle. But one day, when Suyu completed the connection of the 720 cycle heaven aperture, he would no longer need external support to open his primordial spirit aperture. At that time, would Suyu still need me? This thought suddenly appeared in Xingyue's mind. Very quickly, this thought flashed through her mind as she looked coldly at Suyu. You might not be able to live until that time. Moreover, even if there was a cultivation technique with 720 acupoints in the ancient times, I'm afraid that not many people would know it. Suyu smiled. That might not be the case. I think that old Zhou from Xingyu Mansion would know it. If that was really the case, old Zhou would be extremely powerful. If a martial king could kill him, would a martial king be able to do it? If that was the case, King Wen might be able to do it as well. The human emperor might be able to do it as well. Human emperor, King Wen, King Wu, old Zhou, Shi Guang. Suyu did some calculations. Right now, there were probably 5 peerless experts that he knew of. It seemed like all of them were humans. It was truly strange that such a powerful human could actually destroy the ancient era. Suyu no longer thought about it. He withdrew his holy light and civilized will. At this moment, he looked particularly delicate and pretty. Even if he looked like a dead spirit, he was still a handsome dead spirit. Beside him, he too watched for a while and was speechless. He said, "Are you going back?" "Of course." Su Yu nodded. The starry mansion would open the day after tomorrow. He had to go back. He smiled and said, "Sirs, thank you for your trouble this time. Everything went smoothly. Now, I'm thinking whether I should go back through Hongmeng City or through the ancient city of Xinghong. I've already established a relationship with both sides. Whether it's Hongmeng or Xinghong, I can go down whenever I want in the future. That's because they're all my territory. Let's go through the ancient city of Xinghong." He too suggested, "The news that PM inside seems to have been found out by someone. Someone might be keeping an eye on Hongmeng Ancient City and me." You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories. Chapter 2748, Chapter 2748, Chapter 584 is back. 5. Chapter 2748, Chapter 584 is back. 5. Su Yu was stunned. Yes, I spread it. Everyone outside knew that he too was inside. Perhaps, they would really be watching over there. At this moment, he too was also somewhat suspicious. "Su Yu, did you spread the news that I was inside?" He kept feeling that someone had found out. He felt that many people were scolding him. Su Yu coughed dryly. "How could it be? I'm not that kind of person. My lord has misunderstood." He too sneered. "It was you." As expected, humans were all treacherous. This guy had actually leaked the news that he had entered early on. He really had some skills. Thinking of this, he said, "Could it be that you found out the moment I entered?" "That's not it. I only found out when I reached the second floor." Su Yu smiled and said, "L just happened to hear the Lord's voice. I have great respect for a person like the Lord. Once one heard the Lord's voice, one was very happy. I couldn't be happier." He too wanted to kill him. He glanced coldly at Su Yu. Shameless scoundrel. No wonder there weren't many people left each time I went up to the next floor. You killed them, right? Then. Did you ask me to take the blame for you? Su Yu denied it. He quickly said, "Sir, let's not talk about this anymore. First, seal this place. Don't let the other dead souls know about this place, in case something goes wrong. Next time when the dead soul's realm goes to the living soul's realm, this place is a good place that doesn't need to follow the rules." After saying that, he continued, "Also, sir, when I go out this time, I plan to kill a few invincible existences to intimidate the heavens. Are you willing to help me, sir?" He too said coldly, "You want to open another passage and let me out? Aren't you afraid that if I go out, I'll kill randomly and spread the aura of death? Very soon, your old turtle will kill you, do you believe it?" That was true. Troublesome. He placed his hopes on the fact that he too would not cause trouble. Forget it, if he too really went out, he might not be able to control himself. The nature of the undead was to kill, destroy, and spread the aura of death. It was still very troublesome. Unless he could control he too, but that was very troublesome. Let's wait and see. Su Yu smiled and said, "Sir, let's wait and see. When we need it, I hope that Sir can help me, including Sir Xingyue and Mansion Master Xia Chen. If we work together, even if the half-emperors of the heavens don't appear, anyone would dare to fight. You're not afraid of the punishment of the rules, but I don't mind going out to meet my old friends." He too had a playful look on his face. Going out was still very good. As long as Su Yu wasn't afraid. Su Yu laughed, and very quickly, he walked out with the others. As they walked, he asked, "Lord He too, are you the only invincible one in your territory?" "Of course not." He too smiled faintly and said, "I'll still have 2 revived undead sovereign lords under me. Hongmeng Kingdom is the strongest in this area, followed by the Tiger Brothers. Now that they're dead, Hongmeng Kingdom is the strongest. Su Yu looked at Xingyue. What about you? Xingyue's face was cold. I don't have any undead monarchs under me, what am I looking at? Su Yu understood. That's right. A undead monarch who doesn't even leave the passageway, you expect her to subdue the undead monarch? You must be joking. On He-Tu's side, the two of them were actually lacking. However, it was actually very difficult to subdue the undead. If they subdued them today, they might forget about it tomorrow. If they continued to fight, it would be considered pretty good if he too could subdue the two of them. Then Lord Xingyue, lead the way. It's good that we don't have an invincible monarch. It just so happens that there won't be any big movements. We'll go to the ancient city of Xinghong and return silently. Hehe, wait for the others to wait for me outside. I'll go out and deal with them. The teleportation would only be activated the day after tomorrow. Su Yu also wanted to see who would return alive this time. It might not be just the humans. How many people were left on the 8th level? What about the 7th level? Including the area that he too had swept through, there was no one alive on the lower 6 levels. These were all uncertain things. He too might not have discovered some secret realm treasure lands. If he had not discovered them, he naturally would not kill them. As for Zhan Wushuang and the others, Su Yu did not kill them, but he did not bring them with him either. In the dead soul world, no living people could be brought with him. Other than Harry Ball, who was not considered a living person, it was like a divine text. He just had to pretend that it did not exist. Su Yu threw Zhan Wushuang and the others to the great Qin king. He did not know if he could give the human race more confidence and save their lives. He wanted to see if he could make the celestial race give up on killing them. Let's go. A group of people walked out and soon, He-Tu's aura of death filled the air, sealing the entrance to the black hole. He smiled and said, let's go. If the others come, I will sense them. Xingyu walked in front, still cold and indifferent, leading the way for the group. They were going to her undead kingdom. This time, the group moved even faster. There were no undead lords nearby. They sped along, and in less than a day, they arrived at a huge black forest. Su Yu was stunned. What was going on? He didn't see any plants along the way. Why was there a forest here? A dark forest. There were trees everywhere. Were there any trees in the Dead Souls realm? In the middle of the dark forest, there was an ancient castle. It was huge and it was floating in the air. It looked more lively than other places. Around the forest, there were groups of dead souls under the leadership of the invincible dead souls. They were wandering around as if they were patrolling their territory. He too was not surprised. He had seen it before. At this moment, he too smiled and said, Xingyue, you are really boring. Other undead lords are either cultivating or fighting. You are the only one who has revived for countless years. If you have nothing to do, plant trees and build your ancient castle. You are too free. No wonder your strength has not improved.